Alright, we're back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all Week 16 action. Whew, man, there are a lot of good ones here. There were still some blowouts, but a lot of the games this week were really about when you think about it in retrospect. Simply changing the narratives. It could be of a different team, it could be of a specific player. No matter what lens you look at this through, these individuals, these teams started to change some narratives about themselves in some of the wildest ways imaginable, and maybe in some cases, exactly what you might have been expecting from them for quite some time. This game right here to start it out could have very much been a Game of the Year candidate. And it took a while to get there. But with them mentioning that this was the first ever Thursday Night Football game with 11 plus win teams facing off against each other, by the end of it, man, you certainly weren't disappointed. Unless, yeah. My goodness, man. Where do you even start with this? Because, to be quite honest, when you looked at this game early on, the Hawks did exactly what they had to do. Now, I'm not going to lie, the run game wasn't as effective for the Rams in this one like they would have anticipated. But they kept on picking up solid gains, and they continued to stay on the field, which would be a theme for most of the first half, honestly. Now, they did manage to get a fourth down stop here, and, the first drive went well. Part of the excitement surrounding Gray's Zabel getting picked in the first round this year is exactly how versatile he is. I mean, you literally saw the man on this Kenneth Walker III catch, as great as it was for him to get all the way down the field. You have this man just setting the perfect block to get him out in even better space and continue this massive run down the field. So that was tremendous work. Also cleared up enough space subsequently for Zach Charbonnet to get in for a 4-yard rushing touchdown. Ultimately, Kenneth Walker III would get his later on, but we'll get there. When it came to the Rams, though, they just implemented ball control in their own way. No, the run didn't have to be as deadly, but in between shifting around Kyron Williams and Blake Corum usage, they continued to keep the defense on their toes. One that already really couldn't stop Puka Nacua all that much, to the point where even when he wasn't being targeted, you had other people committing so greatly to trying to double team him at certain points in the game that he just got other people open. And it was this constant shift. Ultimately, the Rams would be in a spot where the Seahawks kind of were, in terms of settling for field goals for a while, despite that ball control. As Mavis would have to kick a 23-yard field goal to get them on the board, they were still down at this point. Then it just got rough for the Seahawks. I'm telling you, at the end of this half, they had only been on the field for about 8 minutes or so in terms of time, whereas the Rams had over 20 minutes of possession or something like that. It was bad. The offense just could not stay on the field. And it wasn't for lack of effort in terms of the rushing attack. It was okay at best. But, man, some of the play calling was just very conservative in nature. And granted, they had constantly cited a number of different times in the game that, hey, after this Rams game, or at the very, time of this first Rams game, where Sam Darnold just got completely worked by this defense, ever since then, it has kind of been on a little bit of a decline in terms of different passing metrics, including being able to get the ball down the field and just general efficiency from that front. You kind of saw that here. The routes weren't even really that threatening enough to make any specific play from it. And you are trying to give Darnold something light to work with. as if he just completely can't go out there and really, through any volition of his own, be able to make some risque plays without getting himself in situations to turn the ball over. Like, 4 turnovers will do that to you. But in a high-stakes game like this, you could ill afford to play scared, I would say. Especially when you consider how they kept on targeting Nacua. Because whether, like, honestly, no matter the coverage he was getting he's just that great of a wide receiver. But this 54-yard gain down the field was inexcusable to me. Because how the fuck do you actively let him get open on a post? Drake Thomas, I mean, I guess everybody else is in his zone. You don't man him up at all. You don't put a body on him to help out at least. You just let him run all the way rampant down the field like that. And he promptly burned this defense all the way down the field. Luckily for the Seahawks, though, with a delay of game being called eventually as they were in goal-to-go territory, Mavis had to settle for a field goal again. But once more, the Seahawks themselves couldn't stay on the field for long enough to really warrant much of anything. The Rams were content with sending as much pressure his way as possible, and it paid off with Landman being able to land a sack on Sam Darnold in the backfield to force another 3-and-out here. Ultimately, the Rams would finally break the streak, and it was just tough. Literally, 6-minute drive. Not necessarily an explosive run play, but doing enough to try to wear this defense down. And ultimately, they were so committed and focused on the run that it left Terrence Ferguson open. Literally lulled Nick Amawari, as great as he's been, lulled him to sleep in coverage. He saw it late, and Ferguson would be able to score, giving the Rams their first touchdown of the game. There was almost kind of the same flow from this drive for the Hawks here. I'm not going to lie. Zebel was doing well for most of the game, but one area that he did tend to struggle with was specifically trying to match up against Kobe Turner. Turner at times kind of had a field day against him. Like, Darnold looked like he had a read here for a second, but this man, Turner, literally just bullied him out of his way, got in the backfield, and pressured Darnold for the sack. As unfortunate as that was, and at that point it seemed like, oh, okay, this was just going to be yet another nothing burger for the Seahawks here, Kenneth Walker III had other plans when they decided to give him the football. I don't know how he managed to pick it up because you're not expecting a 3rd and long run to work. But then again, this is the same man who scored a touchdown on 3rd and very long in goal-to-go territory against the damn Steelers earlier in the season. So I guess you got to have faith in him at that point. And he made Landman miss. You tried to tackle him. He got so low in such a tight space. And ultimately, with all those moves, he managed to pick up a first down somehow, some way. Maybe, if you play this correctly, you could double dip in theory if you were the Seahawks. It was promising for a second. And hell, when Sam Darnold got the Tom here, he managed to get a pretty good pass, solid pass, over to Cooper Kupp off of a good route in the post. The only problem with that is that the damn turnovers flared right back into things. It's like, damn, man. I mean, it's just deflating. Like, you're in field goal range. You have Cooper Kupp getting that well of a catch in space, and Cameron Curl hits his helmet right on the ball, forcing it out. Ultimately, the Kobe Durant would recover it, and that would end the half. Man, the third quarter, though, would just see absolute hellfire for the Seahawks. There's really no other way to put it at this point. I will say that it started off promising. The double dip didn't necessarily end up panning out, but at least, they got Kenneth Walker III in space. Great blocking on the perimeter, and it opened up just enough room for him to burst through, getting a 55-yard touchdown run to give them a brief lead. Now it was just about trying to focus in on defense. The problem for the Seahawks was that they are a team that loves to get to the quarterback, and they're definitely going to have their different types of shell coverages while also trying to have enough backers down low to watch for medium routes and things like that. And they definitely love to dial up the blitz when they think it's favorable. The thing is, Matthew Stafford has been too damn good against the blitz. And again, whether it was 4th and short, 3rd and long, regardless, they were sending it the whole time. Matter of fact, 4th down attempts for Sean McVay was top for the most in his coaching career. And that was just in the first half. It didn't really change all that much as we got further into this game. Especially with him just uncorking a dime to Xavier Smith simply because of the fact that they sent a double coverage over to Nacua's way. I think it was like Devin Witherspoon got distracted for a brief second just trying to make sure that Nacua didn't get the ball. And that ended up being a decoy route. Xavier Smith was open right down the middle of the field, and Stafford just sent that motherfucker down there. Luckily for them, they were able to, with the help of Ernest Jones IV, the former Ram himself, also looking for a bit of revenge, hold them to a field goal. That had been going well for them. They'd been working well in the red zone. That would kind of change a little bit. And it's just because of, oh my goodness. Those things started creeping right back in. One could attribute Jackson Smith and Jigba's lack of usage in the first half to also be a reason why they were facing this deficit early on. They had to utilize the Debo package for him to get his first grab of the night in the second half. But it was a damn good 20-yard gain out of the backfield. Nevertheless, even with that pickup, they'd be stuffed short because of their run defense on the first 2 downs off the reset. You got in 3rd down, and they had a pattern of different slants taking place. This Wallace kid for the Rams ended up getting a pretty well-timed curl coverage on this route. Darnold never saw it coming, and he got absolutely baited into a brutal pick to get them right at the 1-yard line, instantly leading to a Blake Corum touchdown. As great as the Seahawks defense has been, there's not much that you're going to do about that. And it looked like the Rams were in even better sights once they were able to, despite having Jackson Smith and Jigba get yet another catch on this drive, they would force a deep punt before just having Puka Nacua scorch his way down the field again. This time with a different post. In a similar way of not really having a true man on him. And again, even when they did, for whatever reason, they alternated between trusting Job to cover him, between trusting Witherspoon to do it. They're not that tall. So in other cases, they would have a disadvantage there. Like, literally, there was a catch that he just muscled in right away from Job's hands just because. Shit was crazy. But nevertheless, Nacua got all the way down the field for a 58-yard gain. Nick Mawari, luckily, was fast enough to catch up to him. And then, man, they started stuffing the run. You needed an immaculate goal line stand. But you know what Matthew Stafford loves to do when he gets in the fucking... Like, this shit is just so unfair sometimes. Because I think that just a few years back, they were literally saying that this nigga was washed. He was injury prone with multiple back injuries taking place. And he was going to be out of the league soon. Well, this man is still out here looking as good as he's ever been in the NFL. If not shedding off some of his earliest career seasons and surpassing some of those totals this year to this point. We still actively have other games to be played. It's insane. Not to mention this fucking touchdown pass. I mean, nigga. You have the man coverage on Nacua, but that's not enough, given the leverage that he has. There's a linebacker just waiting to try to deflect this pass. But he holds him off by unloading the nastiest no-look pass in short distance. Like, he's done that from much greater distances on the field, so it just comes natural for him. But it's crazy. Looks him straight off like this, throws it across his own face perfectly with the peripheral of his fucking eye, and it's a low throw too, only to where Nacua can get it for the 30-14 lead. Man, oh my goodness. They'd start to get Jackson Smith-Njigba fed a little bit. He managed to get over to the left side of the field and take it up a little bit for some extra yardage, while also getting fed again. I mean, hey, with that point right there, we'll get into all the historical components later on, but that would be important for Jackson Smith-Njigba eventually. They got in goal-to-goal territory. It was looking fine for them right now. Like, their situation, you're down 16 points at this point. You needed touchdowns. You could no longer settle. You could no longer afford to be just completely inept on offense. Like, you had to get going now, right now. And they were there. They were in goal-to-goal territory at the 10-yard line. Yet, on a zone pressure, a simulated zone pressure, they had this man, Kobe Turner, back up. Darnold once again got brutally. And Turner managed to lag himself a fucking interception as well. Now, this was at the 9:48 mark of the game in the fourth quarter. And it was looking dire. All the odds shifted in the Rams' favor. Their percentage to win the game was legitimately so fucking high that it would nearly be statistically impossible, per those metrics, for the Seahawks to come back in this game and win somehow. And they mentioned a number of different graphics here too. But again, historical significance, you'll understand with the entire flow of the game. Something clicked somewhere for the Seahawks team. It was looking like the Los Angeles team, were going to get full control of this game. In a matchup that, again, had everything on the line. Potentially the division title, potentially the number 1 seed, potentially, as some analysts said, the path to the Super Bowl. And we aren't even in the playoffs yet. A lot riding on this. And something just completely shifted. But regardless of how you want to view it, it all started with what Rashid Shaheed single-handedly did for the team. The trade deadline acquisition from the Saints showed you exactly why on this night he is now a part of this team. The defense got the quick stop that they needed, but the way the offense was looking, if they had to simply just try to get the ball back and drive down the field, it wasn't looking as though they were going to do this in a quick enough manner. So Shaheed took it upon himself to get this punt, field it, make one cut and shift all the way over to the left side of the field, working the fucking sideline all the way into the end zone for a 58-yard punt return touchdown. And a subsequent 2-point conversion by Cooper Kupp, getting a slight measure of revenge to make this an 8-point ball game within just a span of a couple minutes after that interception. Then, to make matters even better, because you cannot control, you can't quantify momentum. It's a motherfucker. And they kept on riding that shit for as long as they possibly could, because the defense, miraculously, worked into another quick 3-and-out. All of a sudden, man, the Hawks were right in the swing of things. And it looked even more promising as Rashid Shaheed got a damn reverse that was initially flagged. However, he had multiple guys flanking him to the outside, and he just turned upfield yet again for another 31-yard run. And with a defensive offsides penalty, that play ended up standing. Then you get this sequence right here. This shit from A.J. Barner was nasty as fuck, by the way. They've said that this route consistently, the play that they called has consistently been run as a sort of deep crossing pattern. But Kinchins was likely biting on that. And as soon as A.J. Barner saw this, he crossed the fuck out of him, shifted direction over to the right side, essentially the corner of the end zone. And by the time Sam Darnold had enough, they faked it perfectly. Jared Verse was about to crash in from the fucking Raptors again and blow his shit up. But he stood in there, calm, cool, collected, fired it right over to a wide open A.J. Barner, leaping up for the catch and getting a 26-yard touchdown to make this a 2-point ball game all of a sudden. But they needed another 2-point conversion. And no BS. By the grace of God himself, they got this 2-point conversion. This has been very much mired in some sort of controversy because just of the fact that there's general inconsistency with how replay assist is utilized and how on this play, even before you have Charbonnet managed to get in the end zone and just simply pick up the ball, the play was blown dead. So people have had their own kind of reactions to that. But in reality, although not noticing it initially, because I'm watching this myself, I'm like, I thought they were just going to kick it off. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And then I see, okay, they're challenging something here. Little do you know, it actually ends up being a backwards pass, landing off of Jarrett Verse's helmet into the end zone magically. I can't say that every single player out there knew what was going on and what would happen there. I think Cameron Curl, of all people, was really trying to get this ball back in some way. Maybe he thought he could get an interception. Maybe he recognized it. I don't know. Charbonnet was literally in this sideline just cheesing. I don't think he had any idea of what he pulled off. But I think once he got word of it, hey, he was like, hey, okay, man. You know, he definitely did something tremendous there. Literally, to just in a matter of about 4 minutes of game time, come all the way back and tie this up. You knew at that point we were going to get a photo finish. The Seahawks were down but not out of this. Especially when you consider that the Rams, they probably could have run the ball a little more. I think that was the complaint that some other people had. But at the same time, the Seahawks were limiting that. Even if it's just for the sole purpose of running down the clock. They'd been limiting it down the stretch. And defensively, they started to turn it up. So the Rams felt, okay, we're going to utilize our best strength, what's been working all night for us. Neither team would give in for the rest of this period of time. Now the Seahawks, with a massive penalty that just added on to a deeper catch by Terrence Ferguson, the Rams looked like they were in prime position to potentially take a lead near the 2-minute warning. Right near it. Now, the Seahawks probably still would have had enough time, given the fact that they still had a timeout in the 2-minute warning to account for. But hey, sometimes, man, a lot of weird shit can really happen. At that point, you just gotta take it with everything else that you've seen in this game. Because this man, Harrison Mavis, a rather large kicker, who, impressively enough, hadn't missed yet in his NFL career. He's only played in 9 games to this point. Hadn't missed anything. Just barely did. All of a sudden, hey, the Seahawks had a chance to end the game in regulation before Kobe Turner and Jared Verse crashed in from the rafters. Just attacked Gray Zeble. It was rough to watch. But they had no other choice in that case to just punt the football. Now, the Rams had their own chance to respond, and Nacua literally getting up and over Devin Witherspoon, who didn't even bother trying to jump with him in that situation because of that physical nature. They got very close to getting into field goal range, but were ultimately stopped just short. They also had to punt. There wasn't really much time for the Seahawks to do anything, but it was made even worse by the fact that this fucking traitor in Poona Fort damn near made Sam Darnold do the splits in the backfield. Nevertheless, to be all the way down like that and potentially out of a game in which they had been losing the turnover margin, in a season series in which they had been losing the turnover margin consistently, in a game in which they would continue to go crazy with Nacua. It just, oh my goodness, it didn't stop. It didn't stop. Granted, they damn near got an interception on Ernest Jones IV's part, but that would be ruled incomplete. Nevertheless, man, when it came to these third downs, especially as of late, in Nacua, they continued to trust. And this damn touchdown grab by him, literally just getting open in space, not having anybody around him. I think it was Job who was supposed to be covering him up man to man, but he utilized all the space that Job gave him against him perfectly, I might add. And he just ran free into the end zone for a 41-yard touchdown. It's like, damn, bro. You work that hard defensively, and you're in a spot where you want to be, and you give that up, that's rough. If this had been a few seasons ago, that could have been game right then and right there. But fortunately enough in this situation, for just simply trying to have more football take place, they now have a situation where, hey, both teams get at least a possession. There was no way around this one. They had to put forth their best effort as an offense. And when it came down to it, boy, they fucking did that shit when they needed to. Nacua might have dominated, and even he might have had his own stuff to say about it, because there was like a post or something, story or something from Jackson Smith and Jigba acknowledging some comments that Nacua had about Sam Darnold potentially. That's not even to mention a lot of the other different things that Nacua had gone through in just the last week. But I ain't going to play that game. In the confines of the game, Nacua played tremendous. But it would literally be Jackson Smith and Jigba to get the last laugh here. It would be the entire Seahawks team with multiple players, including Ernest Jones IV, stating how they were literally laughing them off as if the game had been over. This is why you play until the clock hits 0. You truly don't know what's going to happen on any given play. But I mean, they went right into it. Yo, Jackson Smith and Jigba has stated multiple times that Cooper Kupp has been a massive influence on him as he's had this ascent to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And little did you know that both of them, in just the span of a few plays, would contribute to some beautiful fucking toe tap catches on the sideline. It would be Jackson Smith and Jigba getting that in contention against Cameron Kinchins, despite having people come out and say that he can't play through contact. Granted, again, that's definitely not his style. But we're not going to act like we haven't seen him make some contested catches in traffic this season. Like he literally has. That would be one such case. But you also had Cooper Kupp on a fairly wide open read. Also managed to get some immaculate toe drag swag on the sideline. All of a sudden, they were moving down the field. They were getting themselves deeper in the red zone and deep into field goal range. But obviously, You couldn't settle for that. You had to score. You had to match the intensity. And with Sam Darnold pulling a sort of fake, not a full roll on this play action play, but it's supposed to distract them. And it was perfect. You have Charbonnet in there for this. He continuously gets the ball in the red zone, so naturally they're going to collapse in some fashion on the run here. Gave him enough space to work with, but the pressure was coming. And he settled down. He hung in there for just long enough for Jackson Smith and Jigba to break single coverage and get in some rapid fire feet into the back of the end zone, essentially. There wasn't a lot of space for him to make the catch, but he made it work. Managed to get full 2 feet in and control for the touchdown. In a game where he had 8 receptions and 96 yards and that touchdown in the second half in overtime. Like, yes, he's had a few slow starts in some of the past few games, but it ain't about how you start the game. You look at the whole confines of this thing, with the Rams damn near dominating time of possession for most of this game, with the Rams setting forth some irreversible damage in some ways in terms of single game stats on this damn defense, with them forcing Darnold's hand at multiple points. It was looking bad, but it ain't about how you start the game. It's about how you finish it. The crowd, when these timeouts were taking place, man, you could hear them all over the place, reverberating all around the area. Although there was some anxiety there. You had worked so hard to get back into this, and you still had to question what the choice would be for them. You could settle for a PAT and tie this thing up. But given what's on the line, ending in a tie might not be ideal. And with the way that the Rams had been continuing to sling the rock all over the field, you couldn't guarantee that you were going to get the ball back. We're changing the narratives. This team, under Mike McDonald, has been conservative by nature across the entire season. Rarely do they go full out in terms of consistently trying to extend drives on fourth down, in terms of consistently trying to go for 2-point conversions. But when the game called for it, they were more than ready to give these things a shot. And so with the game on the line, with the way that the game had been going, they decided to go for 2. I'm watching this. I'm anxious. I'm standing on my feet. I'm saying you need your best play dialed up here. This was for everything. You had to come correct. And they couldn't have called anything better. Nobody was expecting Eric Saubert, a tight end that had recently gotten extended to the squad for a couple years. A tight end who had been on IR for a few weeks now and hadn't played in quite some time this season. That guy got a delay fade route called up, and it took Sam Darnold, if you looked at it from a different angle, he had to get that right past Kobe Turner's helmet across his face. Credit to Zebel for, again, losing that battle a little bit, but continuing to hold up, continuing to fight there. Not allowing him to necessarily get up and deflect that ball. Travels right past him and right into the hands of an open Eric Saubert for the fucking game. In what was legitimately one of the best games I've ever watched in real time. No recency bias. 38-37 victory for the Rams. You got everything and then some that you could have possibly asked for, and even the things that you weren't expecting at all to take place in this damn game, bro. Too much to count. Man, the stats ain't going to do it justice, especially when you consider the historical precedent that comes with this. For example, 581 yards is the most that the Seahawks have allowed in a single game in their franchise history. And still, you just found a fucking way. For the numbers, Darnold had 270 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions on 64.7% completion. Man, it is one game, but you have to give respect to that. Because it would have been very easy for him to be in that position and continue to just say, you know what, I'm not even gonna bother. They've got my number, I'm just gonna settle down, lie down, and just take this completely. There's nothing that I can physically do to get over the hump here. You could feel as if a mental hurdle cleared up for him. Like, this is not, as everybody wanted to make clear, this is not something that has just been a one-time thing for Sam Darnold. He's consistently dealt with this problem. But you know what? Staring down a barrel, he looked it dead in the face and he said, you know what? Enough of this shit. I'm going to shake this shit off. I'm going to find a way to help my team get back in it. Especially after Rashid Shaheed got that flurry of plays. And I think some of the other things that I was watching at the time, put it perfectly as well. Like, there was some reciprocal trust that started to pick up. And ultimately, that led to Sam Darnold being able to have these play calls to move the ball down the field like he'd been doing for most of the season up until the first iteration of this game. Like, yes, are these mistakes going to get you in trouble? Yes. They were literally damn near out of this thing. But ultimately, with a full team effort, with everybody pitching in their own work, Sam Darnold felt something within himself to suggest that, hey, the time is here now. I'm going to step up and do what I have to do to lead this team to victory. Again, it's one game. You're like, stuff like this specifically, I don't know about this. But if he can consistently rise to the occasion and just turn the turnovers down a notch, man, it's truly dangerous what can happen from there. Kenneth Walker had 11 rushes for 100 yards and a touchdown, while also adding 3 receptions for 64 yards out of the backfield. And in fact, his 164 total scrimmage yards were the second most that he's had in his NFL career to this point. Good things happen when you do decide to feed him the football. Also, going back to the Cooper Kupp fumble, the Seahawks also have the most lost fumbles in the NFL to this point. Oh boy. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Jackson Smith and Jigba in this game had 8 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown, becoming the Seahawk with the most ever receptions in a single season in NFL history. In their franchise history, I should say. He stands at 104 for the franchise right now, and I'm sure that's going to tick up as we move further and further along. A.J. Barner also added 4 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown, and Cooper Kupp had 3 receptions for 39 yards. Drake Thomas had 13 tackles. Ernest Jones IV had 12 tackles in the TFL, and Nick Amamwari had 11 tackles, although he would be taken out of the game for the rest of it with like a brief concussion. Kobe Bryant would also be taken out of the game with a knee injury, and they think that he's going to miss a little bit of time at least. That's unfortunate. Hopefully, he recovers from that. Man, Also, too, the Seahawks became the first to convert 3 two-point conversions in the fourth quarter and overtime and win. Also, we're just rattling it off because there's so much that comes with this. 4 special teams touchdowns is tied for the most in the league with the New York Jets, and you gotta understand, like the Jets, again, that's the only thing. That's the only bright spot that they have. No dig at them. We just have to be real about that. Oh, man. But hey, to get onto the Rams side before tying it all together. Man, Matthew Stafford, tremendous duel. I ain't no damn Rams fan, but this was quite the duel, man. 3 touchdown passes, 59.2% completion, and they were definitely able to get him uncomfortable at times, so that makes sense. But 457 yards was a career high for him. And at his age, like, that shit is impressive. The most for him since 2013 as well, and also the second most in the NFL this season. Keep in mind, too, that a lot of the other guys up there in terms of, 450-plus yard games, you had Russell Wilson up there. You had Jacoby Brissett up there as well. All these guys are on the older end. Like, it's just crazy to think. All of them are at least 35 plus. And they're still finding a way somehow, some way, to actively throw for that many yards. The youngest guy up there is Bryce Young. And he didn't even get himself at the 450-yard threshold. So that's like, damn. Not to mention, Joe Flacco as well. All 4 of them are the only 4 quarterbacks in the NFL with 450-plus yard passing games. And Matthew Stafford was, again, just dealing the entire fucking time. Jeez, man. The run game for the Rams would combine for 124 yards and a touchdown, but it wasn't as effective as you would think. Again, like I said, just 3.2 yards per run, and to continue their streak, the Seahawks did not give up a single 100-yard rusher. Neither of Williams or Corum got even close. Man, Puka Nacua, bro. Oh, my goodness. Man. Goodness gracious. Puka Nacua, just to rattle it off. 12 catches, a career-high 225 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him. Literally, any sort of coverage that we threw at him, or lack thereof, man, he just continued to exploit it. There was nothing that was deemed impossible for him to run against and consistently dominate against in this game. Just an unstoppable fucking force in multiple aspects. Not to mention that with all these numbers here, he would set forth a number of different milestones in his own right, as he would become the most prolific Ram in a 3-game stretch in terms of wide receivers. His 480 receiving yards in the last 3 games, and counting by that point, were the most for a Ram since Isaac Bruce. He also had his 3rd straight game with at least 150 receiving yards, which would be tied for the longest streak in NFL history. He also became the 2nd receiver since Isaac Bruce to reach at least 165 yards in 3 straight ball games. He's just been on timing. And it's to the point where after the game, he and JSN would actually have a separation of about 50 yards. Jackson Smith-Njigba is still the leader. But, man, that's just a testament to how they have consistently utilized Puka Nacua all season long when he's been healthy. And considering that Devontae Adams in this game was on the sideline, deemed is out with a hamstring injury, it wasn't a problem for them to move the ball down the field regardless of that. Especially when you consider that with the number of 20-plus yard gains that Matthew Stafford had down the field, he still holds the league lead for the most completions of 20 or more yards down the field. Xavier Smith would have 2 receptions for 57 yards. Kanata Mumpfield would have 3 receptions for 40 yards. Davis Allen would have 2 receptions for 34 yards. And Terrence Ferguson would have 3 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, Colby Parkinson's a fucking traitor too. And this nigga, and Davis Allen for that matter. Man, like, yeah, they were able to rattle Stafford at times. But I'm not going to lie, some of these are just flat out drops too. The amount of times I saw Davis Allen get out in space on tight end screens or in situations where he had a great chance of catching the football and dropped it, I'm like, you're scary as fuck. Same thing with Colby Parkinson. Like, he has the frame to muscle in some catches, and he still dropped a crucial one on one of the last possessions in regulation. Like, there's no fucking way. That's what you get for leaving the team. To rattle in some more context here. Just a lot of historical milestones coming from this thing. You have to respect it. Jackson Smith and Jigba would also become the 5th with at least 100 receptions and 1,000 yards in 2 of the first 3 seasons, along with a very prolific list in Anquan Bolden, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Marshall, Monroe St. Brown, and Michael Thomas. Maybe the last one can be excused. Like, we really don't know what's happened to Michael Thomas at this point. It's a damn shame, man. It is tough to see that. Also, the biggest one of all. The Rams, at a point, had a single loss out of 324 tries when leading by at least 15 points or more in the fourth quarter. The Hawks entered this game winless out of 172 tries when trailing by at least 15 points in the fourth quarter in their franchise history. And with this win, the Hawks would go now 1-172 all time in their franchise history when trailing by this deficit. In that situation, all the Rams would be handed their second loss. You could literally pencil in the Seahawks dropping a game before this if they were in this situation. And a greater than a 9 times out of 10 chance that would happen. But they broke that in the wildest way possible. Definitely spent a lot of time on it, but it was truly that great of a ball game. And to think that that was just the mere start of this week of football. We get a lot of crazy shit going on all around in the NFL. Although, I will touch on this real quick. Derek Hall is suspended still for a game. For, I guess, an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, where they believe that he stepped on one of the offensive linemen for the Rams. And they kept on breaking it down. They kept on showing the replay here. I had to watch it somewhere else, because I didn't see it happen live in the game. I must have completely lost track of it. But when I watched it myself, I'm like, dude, there's no way that you think he intentionally stepped on him. He completely missed him. All he did was step over him, and they suspended him for that. So I'm like, that's kind of fucking wild. But, okay. You know, my goodness, man. Shit. Hey, that's some crazy fucking work, man. Alright, moving on to the Eagles Commanders, which, honestly, this was probably one of the lesser games you could have asked for. I mean, yes, a division rivalry, but at this point, the Commanders' season had been done. No, Jaden Daniels definitely made it rougher for the Commanders to survive. But they started the game as great as they possibly could have. Through Mike Sanderstill, single-handedly, first getting a damn fumble recovery on the very first fucking play. Or forced fumble on the first fucking kickoff play. And then proceeding to, on the next Eagles drive, get a timely open field tackle on Devontae Smith to force a 3-and-out. You want to know what the Commanders did with those possessions? A combined 14 plays in 33 yards, including the lone field goal drive that they had And that shit started from the 26-yard line. They couldn't generate enough to keep up with the Eagles after a while, although they did have a slight advantage. But through the balance that the Eagles started to possess in terms of overall, I guess, progress down the field, they started to incorporate some more Jalen Hurts runs. And before you knew it, with a couple of completed passes here, including one to A.J. Brown, multiple to A.J. Brown, they'd get close enough to at least look as though they were going to do the tush push, do the thing that they always do, right? Wrong. The officials have actually started to tighten up when it comes to calling false starts on this, like they said they were going to. And they got Johnson, one of their tackles, moving early. It would be Devontae Smith in man coverage on Mike Sanders still to cook him up with an out route for a 5-yard score. And from there, you just got chaos. It could have been very easy for the Eagles to maintain control of this game. Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt would get one run. And at this point, he had been a guy who has gotten the third most rushing yards in the debut season for a 7th-round running back since the year 2000. Keep in mind that Kyle Monangai and Pacheco's years have literally just been recent. Monangai's is still actively going on, and you already have that happening. Again, as I've said, you can find diamonds in the rough just about anywhere, but they started to limit it once Jordan Davis got in the middle of everything. Like, yes, Jalen Carter is a tremendous defensive tackle, but you can't underestimate the season that Jordan Davis has had alongside him. I mean, the man has legitimately been one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. They're that deep in that specific position on the field. Brandon Graham would also nab Mariota in the backfield for a sack before you would have multiple drives from the Eagles here where they were able to move the ball down the field. It wasn't just Jalen Hurts getting active in the run game, per se, but it helped to start opening up more space for Saquon Barkley to run. You could feel that an explosive was somewhat in the cards for him. Like, yes, they kept on stopping him for 8-yard gains, 9-yard gains, but again, if they weren't trying so hard to make these tackles, Saquon Barkley would be completely gone in the end zone. And they knew that. Sanders still would get another timely deflection on this, leading to a missed field goal from Jake Elliott. And that would literally become a theme on the next drive, too. Like, I don't know what it is. At least he's been better from it this season, but the man legitimately has had a struggle with making 50-plus yard field goals. And in just some of the weirdest ways imaginable. Like, they're counting on him to be as reliable as possible, and he just keeps with it. I don't understand that. In between all that, you would have Terry McLaurin doing Ohio State things, getting down the field, getting the 40-yard gain, and putting them in the red zone, pretty much with an opportunity to take the lead where Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt would be able to do so. And that would be the score at halftime, despite the Eagles initiating their own control. It would be brutal for the Commanders the rest of the way. Like, there's no chance for them to really do much of anything here. Like, Marcus Mariota was still somewhat elusive. He managed to get a damn reverse spin move on one of these defensive linemen here. But he would eventually go down as this drive went forward. He couldn't connect with Burks on this. And ultimately, he was taken out for what would be the rest of the game at that point. After that moment, literally, the Eagles had full control of this. You had Jalen Hurts just continue to distribute the ball around. And ultimately, they would get down the field again where Dallas Goedert would get himself a damn 15-yard touchdown catch on 3rd and goal from that part of the field. Which, that's just embarrassing as a defense to back them up all the way that far out of the 10-yard line and still give up a score. That's brutal. How how is Josh Johnson still in the league? He would be the guy to play for the Commanders. And once that happened, we knew it was a wrap. He would subsequently throw an interception to Cooper DeJean to cap off the drive. And that would lead to another routine, although very, very revealing Saquon Barkley touchdown run. Man, he, on this play, just muscled through every damn body. Like, it wasn't a play where they didn't do, the Commanders, accomplish what they were supposed to do, at least in terms of throwing bodies at him. But Saquon Barkley had enough strength to just power right through and get into the end zone for the 11-point advantage. Ultimately, multiple 3-and-outs would be enforced before the Eagles themselves would, with another long Saquon Barkley run down the field of 48 yards, finally, damn near got a chance to bang his head on the goalpost, but was ultimately taken out of the game there, giving Tank Bigsby a chance to get some of his own work done in this game, as he himself would bust it all the way to the left side of the field for a 22-yard rushing touchdown. And they would also go for 2, get it, although that angered the Commanders, guys, as you would have multiple people get into a long-standing brawl with each other. And before you knew it, 3 different players were flagged here, including Fred Johnson, Tyler Steen, and Mike Samberstill, with Tyler Steen being ejected from the game. My thing is, again, if you had that same intensity beforehand, you would have been fine. But that is what the Eagles do best. They are relentless when they are willing themselves to be this kind of team. They are relentless in their rushing attack. And they are going to break your spirit. That is how they had gotten into the Super Bowl last year. And they're not completely out of it. They're far from out of it. Yes, the Commanders would get a garbage time touchdown. That would really end up being irrelevant, as the Eagles would get themselves a 29-18 win. And even though it's been a tumultuous season somewhat for them, in a way somewhat akin to their collapse in 2023, at the very least, they are now back in the dance, as they would become the first repeat winners of the NFC East title since they themselves did it for 3 straight years, up to 2004. And man, hey, they are very much just as much of a threat as anybody else. I mean, we are talking about the reigning Super Bowl champs here. And again, whatever they've gone through, they have found a way to overcome most of it. Hasn't been pretty, but they are, at the very least, one of the 7 teams on that side who can say, okay, they're in it now. They're very much in the race now. Man. Now, I guess just to hash it in real quick. The Seahawks would become the 1 seed temporarily with the win against the Rams. And the Rams have also clinched a playoff berth at this point themselves, so they're set. The Rams, the Seahawks also are. And now you add the Eagles to the mix here, with Jalen Hurts adding 2 more touchdowns in terms of passing, along with 185 yards on 73.3% completion in a year where he is just 1 of 3 with Matthew Stafford and Josh Allen to have at least 30 total touchdowns this season. Saquon Barkley would have 21 rushes for 132 yards in a touchdown on what would be one of his better days of the season. A.J. Brown had 9 receptions for 95 yards. Devontae Smith had 6 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. And Dallas Goedert had 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. As for the Commanders, quarterbacks combined for 138 yards total on 52.2% completion and an interception. You needed a lot more to compete in this one. I'll say that much. Their rushing game was also not particularly threatening, as all runners combined for just 90 yards on 3.5 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. Definitely atrocious stuff there. Terry McLaurin led the way with 3 receptions for 53 yards, and Deebo Samuel Sr. had 3 receptions for 35, while Traylon Burks also added 2 receptions for 30 yards. Bobby Wagner was still a force to be reckoned with in ways, but even that wasn't enough to really make up for an entire defense that is just not really that great. And just a lack of contribution completely from the offensive side when you could have at least used a little more of a scoring punch here. But he himself had 10 tackles, a sack, and 2 TFLs in this game. Man. All right, moving on to the Packers and the Bears. And this shit right here, to get right back into it. Similar flow, although different entire score from the Seahawks-Rams game. But in terms of changing narratives and really just being a gritty-ass football game from start to finish, you were absolutely in for one with this. Now, the winds were definitely blowing mightily in what is known as Windy City. It was actually fucking crazy. So, naturally, it was going to be difficult for teams to try to stretch the ball down the field. You were going to have to lean in on your run game. And that wouldn't, in theory, prove to be a problem for multiple teams here that are very great in terms of zone running. Like, they both do it so well. So it was going to be a battle from there. But I think where you get the struggle from both teams is that, man, neither one of them can finish drives. Both teams got pretty substantial drives in terms of being able to get all the way down the football field into each other's red zone. But you had Christian Watson get a ball deflected by C.J. Gardner-Johnson, or at least have the coverage tight enough to where the throw was forced all the way outside, and Watson had no chance of getting it. The Bears would immediately work down the field themselves, having that kind of balance. Getting themselves some great rushing lanes. Getting the ball to John A. Walker, a UDFA of Texas A&M, who caught his first NFL pass on that sequence. Tremendous work for him. But then you just had a gaffe completely here. Because I don't know what made Dahlman think. Although, hey, with some of the Pro Bowl rosters coming out, we have some obvious ones. Okay. Dahlman ended up being one, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like, okay, fine. But this kind of shit here was just ridiculous to see. I don't know how he expected Kyle Munengai on what was supposed to be a direct snap to leap all the way up and get the football. The way I'm seeing this, I'm like, dude, one, it's far over him, and he's too short to be able to go up and grab that shit. Also, even if he's able to field that successfully, his momentum is going to leave him exposed to a number of different Packers leaking into that backfield, trying to level his ass before he can even think about getting enough burst to move ahead of the line of scrimmage here. It's just like that set him up for so much failure, and that would go completely left as well. Man, hey man. They kept on firing though, the Packers. They weren't out of it. And before you knew it, Romeo Doubs would get himself down the field for a 20-yard gain. The Guardian Cap boy himself continuing to make great progress as a guy who, again, even with the Packers not having a consensus number one guy, he's had those kinds of plays at this point to where one could say, okay, for the moment, you are probably the most consistent wide receiver that we have, so why not take a stab at that? It's like, oh man. This shit is just craziness, though. Like, you have to credit Grady Jarrett for staying disciplined on what would be a short screenplay to Josh Jacobs here, but this was the thing about the Packers, too. They didn't stick to their identity when it mattered the most. They were willing to run the ball all the way down the field if they had to. And especially with the shift that's about to take place. They were willing to do that. And yet when it came to them getting in goal-to-goal territory, in fact, they had 18 straight touchdowns in goal-to-go situations before this moment. And then you mean to tell me that you're just resorting to throwing the football. Now, granted, this 3rd and long, you had no choice after just a weird fucking fumble from Jordan Love. But it's like, damn, that would just be a recurring theme. And little did they know it would come back to bite them in the ass. We'll get to that, though. Man, hey. The Packers defense was also compensating for a lot. Obviously, Micah Parsons was a big loss, but at a point in the game, they mentioned that, they had blitzed on about double the percentage in this game that they blitzed any other team in any other game this season, just to try to generate enough pressure to scare off Caleb Williams from doing what he does. And they were also trying to contain him completely, because the man was just running all over the place, scrambling, making so many damn improv plays, and they got sick of that shit. Now, they would have success with that, and they would keep the Bears off the board, but we got in the exact same territory, although it would take a turn, because Booker, one of the defensive linemen for the Bears, would legitimately commit targeting. Like, they could have leveled that up from roughing the passer. He literally went helmet to helmet with this nigga and knocked Jordan Love out to the point where he had to be taken out of the game. In comes Emmanuel Wilson, and in comes Malik Willis, and once that happens, they're going to be running the football, which ended up working, especially considering that on multiple key downs, they decided to just not put a spy on Malik Willis whatsoever. Big mistake with his ability to run the football, and he would make them pay on several occasions here. Getting off to have a 13-yard run here and extending this drive all the way to the point where it got past the 2-minute warning. They had a chance to score, and they still decided to put the ball in the hands of him as a passer, trust him to work his way into the end zone with a pass, and it flopped, as you would expect. Now, the Bears would be forced to punt, and that would be the end of what was a slow, but again, very windy half. You weren't going to get away with too many deep shots here, but to be honest, that would pick up for the Bears a little bit. They started off the third quarter fine, managing to get Munagai out in space for a screen that went 34 yards down the field, and just like that, even without having to do much of anything else, although Xavier McKinney damn near worked the shit out of Caleb Williams on this throw. You never throw that ball late across your body. Well, he tried that shit, and he almost read that perfectly. But Cairo Santos, and I'm going to give him credit, because these field goals got progressively tougher and tougher. The nigga was kicking into winds that were about 20 miles per hour, and he was still finding a way to just curve them in barely. But it paid off for the Bears to somewhat keep them alive in this game right here. Seriously. And hey, if I'm the Packers, I kept complaining about them not running the ball when they got in this space. They would be tested at it again, as Musgrave would get himself a 26-yard gain and pick up another third down to get them closer and closer into territory. With the rushing effort, they had gotten into goal-to-goal territory again. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They gave Josh Jacobs the ball to the left side of the field, potentially counting on him picking up at least a couple yards to kind of break this defense down further and further. Little did they know that Nahshon Wright, the corner, had other plans. A guy that has already forced the most takeaways by an individual in the NFL this season, would subsequently get in run support despite his slimmer frame, rip the ball out of his hands, and get it over to Tremaine Edmonds for the recovery. That's very brutal, to be in that position in the red zone and not convert. And again, every single time you allow that to happen to yourself, you let the Bears linger around. Big mistake in time. Yet immediately they were solid. They forced a quick 3-and-out on their end, and ultimately were able to, from much deeper, get themselves in the end zone for a touchdown. Willis absolutely threw a fucking dot over to Romeo Dobbs on essentially the goal ball, burning right past C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which is exactly what I was fearful of. I mean, it was bold to want to test him, but when it comes to speed, again, in man-to-man, with that in mind, man, they just kept on going at him. And they kept on finding success. Unfortunately, though, he would, land pretty awkwardly. He kind of buckled his knee. That shit looked like it hurt it, and he was subsequently taken out of the game. So I would hope that he recovers from that. But, man, This fourth quarter, man, was fucking crazy work. As I mentioned, Cairo Santos got this deep-ass 51-yard field goal in, despite him not even being known for having the greatest leg strength in the NFL. It's like, that was crazy to watch. With Emmanuel Wilson in as a change of pace guy, the Packers continued to tote that rock all the way down the fucking field. But with them trying to run this trip set and get Jaden Reed out in a flat, he would be stopped somehow by TJ Edwards. Had just the right kind of coverage on it to contain him, and they would be forced to settle for another field goal. Now the Bears would respond, but not as quickly as they would have anticipated. They needed a field goal or any kind of score, far before the 2-minute warning. And it took them a lot just to get there in the first place. They had to have Caleb Williams get out and do what he does best, which is legitimately make something out of nothing. That was his greatest asset coming out of college. And even though they've had him play conservative, they've wanted him to shake off those habits because of the fact that it was keeping them very inefficient as an offense, especially last season, with him trying to hold on to the ball for too long and make all these unnecessary plays at times. I just saw him get served up in the backfield to an oncoming defender. Man, when the game was on the line, he had enough space to scramble consistently, and he picked up key first down here. Ultimately, with a penalty as well that initially took place with them out of field goal range, they worked themselves right back into it before settling for a field goal at that mark. But the ensuing kickoff forced it right into the 2-minute warning. So, after all of this, man, they would go for an onside kick. You can declare at any point when you are trailing. And with the Bears being in this situation, they had no other choice. You would think that this was automatic. You had Romeo Dobbs on the hands team, and it would slip right through his hands in something that legitimately, and other people have said this too, something that legitimately reminded me of the damn 2014 NFC Championship game with Brandon Bostic going through the exact same thing. Shout out to Chris Matthews. Man, it slipped right through his hands even as he was on the ground, and you had Josh Blackwell, a guy who I did vote as a Pro Bowler for special team positions. Man, he recovered it, and the Bears were cooking. Now, they've been a team of destiny all season long. Their 5 comeback wins entering this game in the final 2 minutes were tied for the most in a single season in NFL history, but even then, nothing could have prepared you for this. They started to just work their way down the field instantly, running the 2-minute drill to perfection. It was almost as if they were built for these specific kinds of moments, to just wake themselves up and start playing the brand of football that they are familiar with. Yet, there was a little bit of a lid on the end zone. The Packers were holding somewhat strong. And it all came down to a 4th and 4. With them not even shying away from blitzing Caleb Williams at all. You had an overload on the left side, veering over and forcing him to his right, deeper into his right and away from the line of scrimmage. And he literally has to get off his feet for a jump pass with no part of his body touching the ground at all. Has to fire over a moonball of sorts, even in short range. It reaches all the way up in the air. And somehow, some way, it found a man. You sold all out for the blitz if you're the Packers. But little did they know that the same UDFA who would catch his first NFL catch in this game also would haul in his first NFL touchdown grab. All the way in the back of the end zone. Getting 2 feet down, getting control, and tying this up. completely, eventually forcing overtime. And it got even sweeter from there. Now, granted, they had something great going with Jaden Reed being able to get down for a 31-yard gain, but with the help of TJ Edwards leveling the shit out of Malik Willis in the backfield, and them ultimately just making a brutal mistake that they absolutely couldn't have. All you had to do was just get ahead of the 6. It was 4th and 1. They couldn't really stop your run game like that before said play right there. And the aforementioned fumble forced by Wright. Like, you had it. You could manage to get a yard here. But they had the worst possible thing happen with a just complete mishandling of the snap. And ultimately, it would fall into the hands of Emmanuel Wilson, but he was far too late in being able to really get ahead of the line of scrimmage because you had a wave of defenders just coming at him. Forced them back, and ultimately, the Bears had a chance to go out there and win this thing entirely, and they did it in the most impeccable way imaginable. In their own home turf. First down from the opposing side of the field. And with a chance to game it, they gave Caleb Williams enough time, even with Rashawn Gary somewhat near him, and he fucking unloaded a bomb down the field. A fucking laser beam, dude. Elite fucking ball placement. Only to where this guy could get it. You had DJ Moore streaking down essentially on a deep post the entire time. Working on Keyshawn Nixon and promptly getting the game-winning dagger for a walk-off score to beat the damn Packers 22-16 in overtime. Ironically enough, what I didn't mention earlier is that this man, DJ Moore, had gotten hit by Keyshawn Nixon in what I personally think was a dirty way. Got hit in his back, and you have Keyshawn Nixon just completely moving right through him. Like, I'm definitely certain he saw DJ Moore in his way and still just decided to, for whatever reason, do that. I thought he should have been flagged for it right then and right there. But you know what? That is karma like a motherfucker. That is revenge to the utmost extent. Called his shot for game, mossing the hell out of Keyshawn Nixon. Like, you couldn't make that up if you were in his shoes. Just beautiful, beautiful stuff. So, with that, the Bears would notch their 6th comeback win, giving them the most in the final 2 minutes in a single season in NFL history for any team. It was drastic for them last year. Caleb Williams was literally under arrest for the duration of that season, it felt like. And with this offensive line, with them revamping their whole team, with them having a sort of resurgence in DeAndre Swift and finding that ability to balance things out, Ben Johnson, in his presence to this team, has went about exactly as one would have expected. We are finally starting to see just how much they can really do in these situations. Caleb Williams had 250 yards passing on 55.9% completion and 2 touchdown passes in this game. You know, accuracy's got to get up for him, but as I've said repeatedly, I can say it in brief here. Those 2 moments right there, the touchdown pass to Walker against pressure, the fucking rope down the field to Moore for game, those 2 things show me right there and will define a season of ascent for Caleb Williams. Those 2 moments right there. We can talk about the pass that he had last week against the Browns, but in a situation where you absolutely had to have it against a team who is battling against you for the division lead, for a team who is battling against you for a potential playoff spot. When your number got dialed up, you made those kinds of plays and put forth exactly what they were expecting to an extent with drafting you at number 1 overall. So we truly saw him and his rise envelop right then and right there. You can take any other number of moments from this season, they don't stack up to those. As a team, the Bears had 150 rushing yards on 5.8 yards per carry, with DeAndre Swift leading the way with 58 yards on 13 rushes. DJ Moore had 5 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. Colin Guy had 3 receptions for 43 yards out of the backfield, and Olamide Zaccheaus had 2 receptions for 33 yards. As for the Packers, it's unfortunate that Jordan Love was down and out like that. Malik Willis honestly didn't play that bad, though. 121 passing yards for him to go along with 44 on the ground, a touchdown pass, and 81.8% completion. Could have been a lot worse, especially with his previous track record there. But again, when it came down to running the football, they did well. 192 yards on the ground, 44 carries, and 4.4 yards per carry. Yet you ran away from doing that when you absolutely would have benefited from doing so. And I just don't understand that. LaFleur was livid. 1, with seeing Malik Willis lose that football, and 2, having to go up to Ben Johnson and deal with him after the shit talk that he had take place in the offseason. Yes, he can sweep you if he so chooses, LaFleur. You can't get mad at that. He shot his shot. He got you at least one time very fucking good. Romeo Doubs had 5 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown in this game, and Luke Musgrave would have 3 receptions and 38 yards in this one. Quay Walker would also add 14 tackles in the TFL, while TJ Edwards would have 10 tackles, half a sack, and 5 solo tackles. Just like that, the Bears would be in a situation where they didn't control the division title completely, but at the very least, they take a lead into it. They haven't secured anything. I do think they were in for a playoff berth, at least. But they were definitely waiting to see what would happen the next day. Because given that information, if they got the result in which they were looking for, I should say, they would be able to have an easier path to the division title. But, man, we'd have to see it go down first. And what an interesting day for the football games that at least I ended up watching on Sunday. So to get straight into it, Bills-Browns. What the fuck? What in the absolute fuck? It's just like, oh man. For one, I will say, it's unfortunate as well. Quinshon Judkins at some point would go down with both a dislocated fibula, I believe, and an ankle injury as well. To have a combination of those things is definitely unfortunate. So you hope he recovers from that in time. But my thing about this game is this, even with watching it live, to just try as best as I can, because, there are just so many great games to get into, and I definitely spent a lot of time on that first one. I just need to be able to make sure that I can get this out when I would need to. So I might have to, shortchange it a little bit. But all the context is still relevant. The Browns actually had the Bills' number here. They did. They started off about as well as you could expect with getting Malachi Corley out in space, with getting Isaiah Bond out in space repeatedly, having that misdirection there, and then ultimately getting Harold Fannin Jr. in for a 13-yard touchdown catch. In fact, on that drive, his 67th reception caught at the time would then hold as the current franchise record for a rookie, with him still being able to add even more to it in passing Kevin Johnson with his season in 2003 at the time. Man, hey, bro. Not to mention, I mean, for a while, there was a little bit of back and forth. But it did not help them at all for them to allow James Cook III to be cooking like that. That man, and by and large, the team as a whole, would settle mightily for running the football. And it works out when you can have Cook just burst through for a 44-yard gain, despite having to make multiple swerves around different defenders. Didn't have to turn around the Ohio State man and Ronnie Hickman like that and just completely lose sight of him. But ultimately, he was able to bang that in. And it's like the Browns got in their own way. They were very competitive in this, but they got in their own way. Maybe there's nothing you can do about the multiple deflections leading to picks that were taking place here, as you would have one go right into Jordan Poyer's hands off a deflection, and then you would have a different one get tipped up and fall into the hands after Joey Bosa made the play for old Daquan Jones. Man, hey, bro. Those things are definitely tough, but they were still in a spot to be in a one-possession game. They just needed a stop at some point in this first half, and they couldn't. It was Ray Davis also getting his. It was Todd Johnson. They just still didn't want to watch him for some reason, and he promptly got in for a rushing touchdown. We also had James Cook III get in for another score here to make this a 2010 ball game, essentially at halftime. Josh Allen did not do that much in the passing game, and that was by design. Myles Garrett was anxious. He was chasing history, and he knew it. Literally, you had Josh Allen say after the game he didn't want to be a part of anybody's history highlight reel, essentially. History making highlight reel. Like, yo, he wanted no parts of that. The Bills wanted no parts of that. But it damn near happened. Because you would have a play that would take place where after a load of different chaos going down, you had Josh Allen in this situation run all the way back, essentially. And before you knew it, he was scrambling so much just to get away from Myles Garrett. Okay, it works out, at least it seems, but he is still touched as he fell down by Mason Graham. Weirdly enough, in post, they would explain that even with Mason Graham clearly touching him, it would be Myles Garrett who was credited with a half sack, pushing him up to 22, just a half sack away from tying and a full sack away from breaking the record. And I literally in that moment was kind of thinking about, okay, I mean, hell, we got Favre in this situation where he essentially was seen to have just given himself up completely to allow Michael Strahan to get the sack record. And it's just like, you really don't want to see that. I mean, Myles Garrett, I don't know, he's been working for it all season long, through all the double, triple teams and everything like that. Maybe a half sack doesn't hurt, especially if he just completely smashes the record, but it's like, you know what I'm saying? On the path there, that's probably not something you want to see. And that's really all Browns fans can hold on to at this point. Despite from the fact that at points in this game, you got a fucking Sanders-ception. I tell you, man, in the span of just a few minutes, you saw multiple Sanders be heard from. You got Shedeur Sanders obviously taking place. You have Deion Sanders in the suite chilling, watching his son play. Fair enough. You have Raheem Sanders, who would come in for relief for Quinshon Judkins, while also not having Dylan Sampson take place in this game. Fair enough. The guy from South Carolina actually put together a solid performance on the ground himself. Then you had TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle for the Bills. Then, at a different point, you got a score alert from the Panthers game with Jatavion Sanders getting himself a touchdown. Just too much going on there. Way too much. Ironically enough, the Bills' most successful drive would be a field goal drive that saw them move just 2 yards and rely on Badgley to get them in, man who had already missed a PAT before this. And that would become very important as the Browns were trying to chip their way back into it, because once they were able to settle down, it really was not that bad for them. They would get down the field again and would have Harold Fanner Jr. rush for a touchdown this time to make this a one-possession game. Their defense was holding strong, to be honest with you. Now, yes, they got a little bit of lucky, especially on the last drive the Bills would have before the Browns attempt to try to get down the field again. Because you just can't have Dawson Knox drop that touchdown pass, right? But just 3 points in the second half entirely. Multiple turnovers on downs, forcing Josh Allen to have an errant pass to Tyrell Shavers here. And ultimately being able, in that moment, right then, right there, to get a lead. Yet, once they got into the red zone, they just couldn't get over that hurdle. And were ultimately forced to settle for a field goal. But you still had enough time to make something happen, at least you'd think. Only Greg Rousseau would finally get a hold of Shedeur Sanders, who had actually been doing impressive work as a scrambler in this game, I might add, through watching this. You know, his speed wasn't really honed in on too much. It wasn't really respected, but he was getting some improvisational plays to go. And it did add another element to things at times. But Greg Rousseau is also just a dominant-ass defensive end, and that wouldn't change much here, especially with him forcing Shedeur to go for an intentional grounding situation. You had 3rd and 32 from their own 1-yard line after the 2-minute warning. And at that point, there was almost no point of return for them. Like, how exactly were you going to be able to get that done? I'm not sure. They didn't end up completing a pass here and anticlimactically had to punt. They had no choice. Because it's like, I understand that you'd want them to go for that in that situation, but at the same time, you don't get it. You put the Bills right at the 1-yard line, and they're going to get another rushing touchdown with ease. They're not going to be scared off of doing that. So why try to serve that up to them so easily? There's almost no point of making that happen. But with that would essentially end the game. The Bills getting a 23-20 win and trying to get as close as they possibly can to win the AFC East division title. Although the Patriots would still have brief control of that. Their 116-point differential in the second half entering the game was the highest in the NFL. But you just got, I don't know, very, very slow-paced action from them while still being able to force turnovers and protect the ball enough themselves to survive, not blow the Browns out of the water. I think the Browns could take this loss in stride, but you can't have some of these brutal mistakes, especially in that late game situation. That's just part of the dysfunction, I guess. In this game, Josh Allen had just 130 passing yards and 17 rushing yards. They didn't ask him to do too much in terms of dropping back, because they didn't want Myles Garrett to get after him. But it would be the run game, with them having 164 yards on 5.7 yards per carry and 3 total touchdowns to ultimately take them home. Jordan Poyer, also, fittingly enough for him, being a former Brown, would have 11 tackles, a half sack, a TFL, an interception, and a pass deflection. He was definitely waiting on that. Shedeur Sanders had a touchdown and 2 interceptions, or 157 yards on 69% completion. Which is honestly not the worst. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like, especially against this Bills team, like, that's solid. If you just cut down on those, who knows what could have happened in this game, to be honest. Also, was the leading rusher for the team on 4 carries with 49 yards. And they ran the ball well themselves, 260 yards as a team on 5.2 yards per carry. But ultimately, they just needed that one key play to take them far over and above the Bills in this game. They just couldn't find it when it mattered. Carson Schwarzenegger had 13 tackles, a TFL, and a sack on Josh Allen to force them to punt on one of these possessions that the Browns had an ample opportunity to respond to. But again, failed to do so. It's definitely brutal from that perspective. But hey, man, that is certainly tough. Alright, moving on to the Steelers and Lions. And from the onset of this one, especially the way that the first few possessions for both teams went, this game, to start out at least, was marked mainly by the Lions' pass rush and the Steelers' propensity to stuff the run. I mean, that could tie into the same thing, but essentially, the Steelers recognized that the goal at the end of the day is to throw multiple bodies in Jahmyr Gibbs' direction and limit David Montgomery's progression and contributions that he can provide in a game as a power back. And for the better part of these drives, they were able to do exactly that. From the onset, you had Keanu Benton get in the backfield and sack Jared Goff on the very first drive. And when it came down to it, they were able to keep a hold on those guys down the stretch. David Montgomery did rip off a 17-yard run eventually, but Jahmyr Gibbs was never able to find it in the backfield. And once they limited that run, they just started to tee off on Jared Goff. They recognized that the goal was to get him off platform. And even with the minimal success that they did have, even at halftime, Tomlin said as much. We got to get him uncomfortable. We've got to get the ball out of his hands and not allow him to be a beneficiary of the run game. Because every single time that has happened for the Lions, even if you have games where Jared Goff go off, hell, you saw that with the Rams game. Even in games where he performs well, if you limit Jahmyr Gibbs as a running threat, you actively give your defense all the room in the world to just blitz his damn face off. And it paid off for them. Lions, for a while, weren't even able to really get into the red zone, let alone be able to get a field goal here before one of the first few drives they had to open up the second quarter. Now, for the Lions' pass rush here, solely, they had struggled a little bit, even with the Steelers not being able to get points on the board. Between what Gainwell and Warren were doing on the ground, they had been running the ball exceptionally well, and they were able to get ahead of the six a few times. But when they forced Aaron Rodgers and that offense into obvious passing situations, the mere speed and power that they possessed, with also having a guy like Dylan Cook, for example, guarding Aiden Hutchinson in this action, which is still one of the first games he's ever played in the league, in this case. Yeah, they went to town on Aaron Rodgers as well. Aiden Hutchinson would have himself a field day on multiple occasions, getting in the backfield to sack Aaron Rodgers at multiple points of time. He also had some of the obvious guys like Al-Quadin Muhammad getting in the backfield and ultimately getting pressure on the man to force them into punting situations as well. Once we got into that situation, the Lions, in the second quarter, despite having a case where neither team, for 7 minutes on end, was able to pick up a first down at all, they were able to break through for a near 2-minute drill and get a 20-yard passing touchdown to Isaac Tesla, going up and holding on to it through the contact from the hard hitter and Kyle Duggar to get them a 10-3 lead at that point. And the later stretch of the second quarter would truly be chaotic. Because this is where everything started to change for the Lions. Even though they didn't really establish much control, they could say that, hey, they go into halftime with a potential lead, and they have a chance to take some form of complete and total momentum if they manage to get a stop here. They could be in smooth sailing. Only, we got the Steelers in multiple situations where the Lions did exactly what they wanted to do, enforcing 3rd and long situations on the Steelers team that has not really performed the best in those situations. And yet, every single time we got the 3rd and long, Aaron Rodgers found a way to convert it. Adam Thielen, for that matter, to make it even better, found himself getting open more often than not. And granted, you can attribute that to them having a weaker defense. But at the end of the day, this man, Adam Thielen, hadn't been really producing all that much all season long. And maybe that's simply because the ball just wasn't going his way. At a point early in the 3rd quarter, he would already have nearly as many receiving yards in the single game as he'd had all season long. Crazy to think about there. Nevertheless, he'd come through, and that would end up being fortuitous, as they would go for it all, a deep shot with Kenneth Gainwell in single coverage on Alex Anzalone. Aaron Rodgers threw a pretty damn good pass, but Gainwell slipped on his route. He was down on the ground after getting tangled up with him briefly and rolling all over the place. Somehow, just as the ball is getting into his direction, he finds a way to get the nose of the football to sit around on his fucking palm. Okay? He secures the catch while lying down on the ground. And then Anzalone, just completely having his head in the fucking clouds, he loses track of the fact that he needs to go tackle Kenneth Gainwell, like right now. And Gainwell, through that chaos, manages to get a fucking touchdown and the fucking defensive pass interference penalty that wouldn't end up mattering at that point, since he had that extra effort and that IQ to keep moving, because you play until the fucking whistle blows. You do not stop until the fucking whistle blows. As a lot of the other games in this stretch have been telling us beforehand. That would just be the epitome of that. Oh my goodness. Man. It was so tough for DJ Reed Jr. Yeah, I'm going to take it there for a second. I mean, the Steelers had good progress in terms of getting down the field. No lie, but I'm not going to hold you. Some of this shit is just, oh my goodness. Like, man. Luckily, in this situation, they were able to beat the bully. Harbaugh, being a smaller guy, he actually managed to get a good rip on Darnold Washington just before he got taken down to the ground by multiple Lions defenders. And ultimately, Jack Campbell would end up with that. So that's pretty good. From the Lions' perspective, you're thinking, hey, that's perfect momentum. Only they would not move an inch. And Kyle Duggar would get the perfect blitz on Jared Goff, being that far backed up to where, boom, they got a safety right back. The goal is always to get yourself some space in that situation. And with the run being held ineffective, at a point, they had just 10 rushing yards as a team total. Right? So they couldn't rely on that. And it worked right into the Steelers' hands, with them ultimately taking this next drive, despite them not even getting a touchdown out of this. They took damn near the rest of the quarter away, simply by keeping themselves ahead of the chains and having Kenneth Gainwell just go absolutely crazy. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, yeah, this is what he does. People want to have questions surrounding why exactly he doesn't get the general respect he deserves even though he's somewhat accomplished than your favorite wide receiver right now. It's because of the fucking drops, man. There was just no reason. I can't even dress it up for you. There's no reason for him to drop the pass that he got from his former fucking teammate, by the way, in Aaron Rodgers with Green Bay. They were doing that shit all the fucking time there. And you dropped that? Now, he would get concussed afterwards. He would come back into the game. Thank goodness. But that is the fucking thing with him. That is the reason why. Meanwhile, you have Scotty Miller out here picking up a crucial fourth down, getting his small ass in the boundary with the educated feet. Like, the shit makes no sense. It makes no sense. Okay? They would limit the run a little bit when they needed to, although Kenneth Gainwell would still pick up a 9-yard gain for him. And what that did for the Steelers was, again, just grind down the clock. By this point, they had established all the ball control that they needed. All the ball control that they needed. And with the Lions continuing to get these quick outs on the day, man, now it was time for them to completely reap the benefits of this worn down Lions defense. Because their next two drives would literally just see them go run, and feed Jaylen Warren for multiple 45-yard touchdown runs. And they were damn near looking the same way. Both to the left side, both with him getting perfect blocking out in space on the perimeter to set a fucking zone to run through, and he burst through it perfectly. Gone, out of there. No one even close to catching him whatsoever. Now, in between that, you did have the Lions finally break through and get a touchdown over to Khalif Raymond when they absolutely had to score. Or otherwise, that was a wrap. But still, at no point did it feel for a while like the Lions could truly make enough moves to last and keep up with the Steelers team. But I guess this has been the theme of the entire day, the entire week to this point. You gotta expect the unexpected. You just have to. The Lions were very, very, very backed up. But with Jameson Williams getting multiple in-breaking routes and also having Jahmyr Gibbs do damage out of the backfield, it would be Jahmyr Gibbs from 4 yards out with a receiving touchdown to not only get them back within a one-score game, but also, finally, it seems like they've been waiting for a while, but become the youngest to 48 scrimmage touchdowns. Youngest to do so before the age of 24 and the most prolific to do so before the age of 24, breaking the previous tie he had with Barry Sanders. Man, oh man, oh man. Goodness gracious. Then, it was definitely promising once they decided, the Steelers, to give Jonnu Smith the football as a running back. Yeah. They would also proceed in a situation to get Darnell Washington the ball once more and just have him bully people yet again. All that culminated in them getting down into the red zone and being able to get a field goal, which should have been a chip shot, should have been routine for Chris Boswell, only he fucking missed it off the upright. And then that's when we knew we were really in Bizarro World, because Chris Boswell has been one of the most automatic kickers you can really bank on. And he missed it? Okay. The Lions instantly, granted with a few reasonable penalties here, especially the most important one for a while, being Duggar's DPI on Jameson Williams, they were able to move the ball down the field. They also got a damn tripping penalty from Alex Highsmith, and he would be the second player, along with Matt Milano in the damn game against the Browns. Also, just deciding to trip a person, which, again, it's like, dude, just use your hands, man. This isn't soccer. You can't do that. They'll fucking penalize you in soccer for having illegal tackles like that. But, besides that point, Amon-Ra St. Brown would come alive in that moment, and he'd become incredibly important. Not only would he get the 24-yard gain, but he would get what was believed to be a touchdown from 1 yard out. And it was the perfect situation for Detroit when you are thinking about this. And they are going to be kicking themselves for everything that happened after this. They were at the 1 yard line. Perfect goal-to-goal territory, 25 seconds left, one timeout left. The win is in your hands, and you got it. But they called OPI on Isaac Tesla, what was supposed to be a pick route. Again, you can't make it so obvious that you're blocking, but those things happen all the time, and that would be an interesting call. Nevertheless, it moved them back, and then to make things even worse, you had the offensive linemen. Granted, Steelers were also smart to exploit this at the perfect time, too, against Jared Goff, because their offensive line, as the broadcast team initially said, was patchwork, to say the least, man. Patchwork. All three guys on the interior were guys that hadn't even been like second string guys. These were third string, fourth string players that had barely gotten reps with the starters at all. And you could tell, especially with a critical situation like this coming about and you have that penalty. It backs them all the way up, and they have no choice but to waste their timeout after a shorter Jahmyr Gibbs game. The back end holds strong enough for the Steelers here, them ultimately forcing fourth down, where it looks like they hold Amon-Ra St. Brown short with Jalen Ramsey on the coverage, and ultimately force what is believed to be a stop. Only there's chaos that ensues, because they hadn't blown the play dead yet. But you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, as I guess they're about to, lateral the ball over to Jared Goff. And for a guy that isn't athletic at all, he manages to dash down the field over the goal line and hurdle in for what appeared to be the game-winning touchdown. Lions fans were erupting in all sorts of chants. They thought that they had the game secured. Meanwhile, you had the Steelers come onto the field as if they had won the game. Absolute chaos right there to end off the primetime slot. You couldn't ask for anything better than that. And there was a lot on the line. To tie it back and to make even more context reasonable, if the Lions were to have won this game, they'd still have a much greater chance, potentially, at securing the division title. But if they lost, the Bears, again, as I stated, it would be even easier for them to get it and secure a playoff berth as well. So a lot would be on the line here if they won or if they lost, as the Steelers would also give themselves much more control in what is a chaotic and somewhat underwhelming AFC North right now. They would be awaiting the call for such a long time to determine what happened, and before you knew it, we would end up getting the call where the referee actually stated that yes, Jared Goff did in fact get what appeared to be the game-winning touchdown. But upon replay, upon looking at it, they saw that Amon-Ra St. Brown got a push-off, and that made the penalty non-enforceable, forcing the game to be over right then and right there. Yet you also had all this word salad from the referee jumble himself up to where he damn near walked back what he said and still said, okay, the game is over. So all that chaos in mind, you definitely got to love the ref ball there. But in all seriousness, a truly good game it ended up being between the Steelers with a 29-24 result, although the Steelers, for most of this, had the control in their sights. For one, the Steelers overall would now move to 104-0-1 when leading by 12 or more points in the fourth quarter under Mike Tomlin, in which he also secured his 19th consecutive non-losing season to reach that dreaded 9th win. Goodness gracious. Aaron Rodgers would have another solid outing in a career where he's just made a killing off of owning the Lions. Yeah, 266 passing yards in this game on 66% completion, and with this, he would notch his 19th win and 55th passing touchdown against the Lions all time, which may very well still stand as the second most all time for a single quarterback against them. Jaylen Warren had 14 rushes for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolute fucking beast, man. Kenneth Gainwell also had his own bit of work here, man. He had 14 total touches for 128 total yards and a receiving touchdown already. They also had Adam Thielen get 4 receptions for 49 yards. DK Metcalf had 4 for 42. And Darnell Washington Jr. with 3 receptions for 36 receiving yards. Man, oh man, oh man. And I guess that'll be a development as well. But, yeah, DK Metcalf. Ooh, oh my gosh. Aside from that, though, for the Lions, in the meantime, Jared Goff, again, 364 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, on 63% completion, could be considered having a tremendous game overall. And you want Jared Goff to be the one to beat you when you're in these situations. You don't want all these other weapons to get involved in contributing to a win against your team and just have an absolute field day as an offense. Because it all funnels through the run game. And the Lions had just 15 rushing yards as a team. They could not run the football. Averaged just 1.2 yards per carry. That shit was stuffed. And it gave the Steelers all the advantage. Jared Goff can be a damn good quarterback when he's in the zone, but do you still want him with the way that this offense is set up? You want him passing the ball 54 times? I don't fucking think so. Even when the Lions had a chance to come back in this one, they still were too far out of it in a way to where they couldn't utilize the run like they would have wanted to. They scared them off of doing it, and it worked to their advantage. Jamison Williams had 5 receptions for 70 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown out of the backfield. Khalif Raymond had 4 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 4 receptions for 54 yards. Isaac Tesla had 4 receptions for 52 yards and a touchdown. And even Anthony Ferkser had 4 receptions for 40 yards and a touchdown. Jack Campbell also had 14 tackles and 2 pass deflections as well. And with this game as well, Jared Goff would have 21 straight games with at least a touchdown pass for the now tie with Matthew Stafford for the longest consecutive streak of games with at least a passing touchdown in Lions history. Jahmyr Gibbs as well. It's just such a crazy turn, because to think that this man, at a point they showed on the graphic, that he is the only player with at least 100 scrimmage yards and 6 yards per touch in a minimum of 40 games in NFL history. He's doing that and was limited that badly. This is also not a one-off thing. And again, that shows just how much of a threat he has become now. But ultimately, to progress to an even greater level, at some point, the Lions are going to have to be able to work around those things. And they were able to nearly accomplish that, but it would not prove to be enough for them to get the win here. Alright, moving on to Patriots-Ravens, where you literally had them at M&T Bank Stadium watching the final result of the Detroit game in the stadium. And they were kind of the same way. They needed to make sure that they were on at least an even playing field with the Steelers team. For they needed to, at the very least at that time, win out to make sure that they had the best chance imaginable of taking the division lead. They controlled their own destiny, but if they were to suffer some kind of defeat here, it was going to be absolutely rough for them. And, oh man, it looked like it was going well. They forced Drake May, a man who had been risk-averse for most of the season long, into an early interception. They got themselves started greatly with Derrick Henry getting himself a touchdown run. And then everything else collapsed from there. Yes, a Derrick Henry fumble has been something that has haunted Ravens fans for most of this season, but even worse for them. Lamar Jackson would go down with an injury to his back. I was wondering what had happened in real time as I was watching it. And he would never return to the game, forcing one read man, Tyler Huntley, to enter the ball game. And honestly, he didn't play that bad, but there were naturally going to be some offensive lapses with him being out there. And they still were able to, at those moments, get Derrick Henry going. However, it had always been something, and you just can't explain some of the things that happen here. Even with Ardarius Washington, a man who had recently returned, forcing a fumble on Drake May, you still had some interesting kind of self-sabotage damn near take place. I don't know what compelled Mark Andrews in this moment to think that he could magically pull off a hook and ladder play. That's what niggas get for trying to copycat the damn Seahawks. And not only that, it was an illegal forward pass, which saved him from throwing essentially an interception at that point. Nonetheless, even with all that chaos in mind, the game was tied 10-10 at halftime. And, I mean, the Patriots were on the back burner for a little bit. They could not establish too much of their rushing attack. Also aided by the fact that Travion Henderson, would unfortunately go down with an injury as well, and also not return in this game with what was deemed to be a concussion. Man, the Ravens had Derrick Henry teeing off. They had him teeing off. And yet, with all that in mind, they were still trying so hard on their front. The blitzes did get there at times, with Draymond Jones getting some effective pressure on Drake May. But one thing that has been said, and Collinsworth wasn't even doing any sort of glazing at all when he said this as well, alluded to this as such, you can't scare him off. The man has been playing unfazed damn near most of the season. And he stood in that pocket continuously, time and time again, firing shots over to Mac Hollins, firing a deep bomb over to Kyle Williams, being guarded by Marlon Humphrey in man coverage. We know he was licking his chops, even as a damn rookie, to get in that end zone for the 37-yard touchdown catch. And Drake May would go on through it all to have, despite that interception, a career night with 380 passing yards on 70.5% completion, despite that. And a season high. Again, to think about him having this great of a season while not having a 300-yard game at this point is pretty interesting to consider. Yet the most revealing thing for the Ravens here is that, you'd want to have your best remaining skill position player out there if Lamar Jackson is not present, and they proceeded to, for every single drive after Derrick Henry scored that touchdown, not play him. Can you believe that? They didn't play him in the clutch. I would say, again, as I've been asked, that is fireable on John Harbaugh's end in a game that they would ultimately lose 28-24 and now be in danger of completely missing the playoffs. You really do have to see what happens with the Browns game next week to really get full context. But if that doesn't go so favorably, yeah, I'd probably can John Harbaugh at that point. Because there's no way. This has been a recurring theme for him in between the constant blown leads of double digits in the fourth quarter specifically, and literally not using Derrick Henry in these games. Like, you have him on this short-term contract where he's still one of the highest paid players at the running back position for a reason. And even if it had been a down season for him, even if Derrick Henry has been he's handled this situation so graciously, I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, the fumbles have been rough. You don't want to see them from him, but he's been more than accountable on his end about him, and even he's made the allusion to the fact that he thinks he's not getting as many touches as he did last year because of the fact that he's been that fumble prone this season. Yet still, when the time came for him to be dominant, he was more than dominant. And you don't have him in for the most important possessions of the ball game at that point, as the Patriots have been starting to get themselves back into it. Need I focus your attention again to the multiple playoff games last year in 2023, where you had Derrick Henry fail to record any sort of meaningful contribution late into a ball game simply because of belief in other players? Especially against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's unfortunate. Same thing with the Bills earlier this year, technically. You don't lean on them at all, and that ultimately leads to defeat. You'd think maybe you'd learn your lesson at some point. Instead, you put your faith in Zay Flowers. Oh boy. Look, he's a good wide receiver. There have been many questioning his entry into the Pro Bowl. He's actually a good wide receiver, but he has a propensity, okay? He has a propensity, even with him accounting for 8 total touches and 102 yards and a touchdown run here, like that same human joystick ability that he possesses that can work to the favor of a team also hurts them, just happens to hurt them at every single important junction. Every single one. I can take it back to the fucking AFC Championship game in 2023 with him literally having L'Jarius Sneed punch the ball out of his hand before he crosses the end zone. And maybe that can be forgiven, even though, again, that is with the season on the line. That is with a Super Bowl appearance on the line. But I digress. He was a rookie at the time. This shit has been the case in every single season he's been in the league. And at some point, when you are actively trying to do all that dancing around and then you absolutely get your fucking back blown out by K'Lavon Chaisson, punching the ball from behind you, and ultimately gaming it right then and right there. And this is year 3 of this year. Something has got to tell you, okay, you actually have to learn from this. You gotta stop this shit. Because there's no way. There's no way that you can continue to get away with doing this, man. It's ridiculous. As for some other historical numbers here before passing this on. Derrick Henry, again, to showcase his dominance. He now gained, with his first touchdown run, the 3rd most rushing touchdowns of greater than 20 yards in the same ballpark as Barry Sanders and Adrian Peterson. And yet, compared to both of those guys, he is a full-blown upback in every sense of the word, with just essentially freakish fucking speed and strength. And he is utilizing that to his advantage to still get out in space somehow, some way, even without being this east to west shifty kind of player, and getting it done with just hard-nosed fucking running. You gotta respect that. Clearly, the Ravens coaching staff does not. Also, with Drake May being in this situation, he currently leads the league in completion percentage, and probably still does after that game. At a point, it was mentioned on a graphic that the other player in NFL history to have been younger than 24 and lead the league in completion percentage was John Brody. And that was a long time ago. Drake May, if he finishes the season at that rate, would become the 2nd player all time to do so in such a situation while being younger than the age of 24. And overall, for the Patriots, they hadn't seen a comeback like this in the 4th quarter, literally since Super Bowl 51. The most telling stat of all. If that didn't just drive the dagger in even further, I don't know what the hell does, because for you to be compared to that Falcons team has got to be an absolute slap in the face, especially considering what direction this team, the Ravens, were supposed to be taking throughout this season. It's definitely tough. But again, who am I to, as a Seahawks fan, thank you to Mike McDonald so much, man. Thank you. Who am I to attest to this at all?
Now, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, I got the Ravens hat, so I'm a Ravens fan, right? Kai asked me to draw my input in. So, this was a wasted season. Like, this whole season was a wasted season. Now, in week 15, we got to rely on the Cleveland Browns to beat the Steelers and, to hopefully give us a chance so that we can win out and possibly make the playoffs. But it was already a wasted season. Like, I'm done as a fan. Like, I don't know, because in the beginning of the year, this was a team that was basically supposed to be where the Seahawks are at right now. This is a team that was supposed to be Super Bowl contending, reaching the Super Bowl, possibly winning the Super Bowl. This is a team that a lot of people said that this was the best roster in the NFL, but everything has regressed. Like, it's not even Lamar as the quarterback regressing. Like, this dude has gotten beat up the whole year, like, not like any other year in his career. This offensive line, the guards have not been playing well. Like, they have been the worst offensive linemen that we've had, and it's kind of caused everybody else to have an off year themselves. Lamar is it's like a mental thing with Lamar, because he knows that the offensive line is gonna, prevent him from doing what he has to do. So his timing's kind of off. He's not running the ball that well, and the offense after his injury was just looking dull, man. And Lamar, like himself, he was having a great first 3 weeks, but then the defense was messing up. If it's not one thing, it's the other, right? But I'm gonna mainly focus on the offensive line. So this offensive line was terrible the whole year, but Lamar, right? He gets hurt because of how much he's getting beat up by his offensive line. What does John Harbaugh do? He does not do anything about it. He does not change the offensive line. He does not push to get any offensive linemen that we need from free agency. Instead, through the free agency period, we get defensive linemen. And of course, Alohi Gilman, which they're both productive, but if you can put your energy into getting those players, you can also get another helpful piece to our offense that can help us get better. And they didn't. Lamar is never winning a Super Bowl with John Harbaugh. He's never winning a Super Bowl with the team around him. And the whole entire design, the whole entire philosophy of this team is just broken, and it just needs to be fixed. Derrick Henry, contract year. Zay Flowers, contract year. Isaiah Likely, contract year. We might have to get rid of all those players. Added on to the fact that Lamar is projected to get paid $77 million next year, and they're going to have to extend his contract. What reason does he have to stay here? It's been a waste the past 8 years. An extreme waste the past eight years. And don't get me started on media making Lamar look worse than what he is. Just saying ignorant things about Lamar. It's not even just incorrect. It's just straight up ignorant. And they purposefully leave out important context to try to make this man look worse time and time again. And the fans, even our fans, continue to just like brainlessly believe that stuff, and it's just Lamar's just not in a good state right now. He's just not in a good state, position wise, because he said to the fans that he was going to win a Super Bowl, but all this team has done has failed him. So now he has to make a decision this offseason whether or not he stays on this team or not. And Derrick Henry, just like Malachi said, Derrick Henry just got neglected at the end of the game. Only had a 2-year contract, not that much money per year based off how he's performed in 2024 and this year. But I feel like Lamar in this offense was much better off with not having Derrick Henry in general, like just not even signing Derrick Henry. And the reason why I say that is because, firstly, Lamar was able to be more like himself. Secondly, it makes this offense more unpredictable. Now, of course, when we had Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, our receiving core was terrible. And you can basically make a case for it still not being so good either, considering the fact that Rashad Bateman had an extreme dip in production this year compared to last year. Zay Flowers, it's just like he doesn't learn from his past more so. Like, he's still the most reliable guy that we do have, but yeah, like he just hasn't learned fully. This receiving core is just not good. Like, people say that Lamar has weapons, but then they only talk about the defense. And of course they talk about Derrick Henry. But when, like, there will be games when competent defenses like the Broncos will come up to Baltimore and take away both Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. You don't have Rashad Bateman doing anything. Some of the times you don't even have Zay Flowers doing anything. DeAndre Hopkins, like, he's the most consistent pass catcher, but he doesn't create separation. And they purposefully don't play Tez Walker, who is probably our most dynamic receiver that we have. You just don't give him a chance. I don't understand. Like, it's done on purpose, in my opinion, because Lamar, he gets paid $77 million next year. They have to make a case for Lamar to make less of that so that they can continue to improve their team. But why should Lamar listen to them? Why should Lamar listen to them? They purposefully neglect his needs as a quarterback. You see players like Bo Nix, you see players like Drake May, just straight up out of nowhere, just being better than us. They had losing records 2 years ago. Now they're better than us. And we're staying stagnant to where we have been for the past 6 years. And every season has ended in a brutal way for this team. And they have not found a way to change. So for this season, in which, Lamar Jackson is about to get paid $77 million, and they're trying to restructure his contract as soon as possible, they don't change the offensive line. They don't bring in a dynamic receiver to help this offense be more unstoppable. And they're just letting Lamar get banged up week after week. They're seeing this wide receiver core not produce week after week. They're seeing, again, Lamar's getting hit. Falele, Voorhees, these players, they know that there's problems with him, but they don't want to address it because they don't want to lose more money than they already have. this defense has had ups and downs. Most of their downs come from the good teams that we have to beat. And it's just, we're frauds. The Ravens are frauds. They are simply fraudulent. Now, I don't know what's going to happen next year, but all I know is, as a Ravens fan, it's been ever since 2018. I've been trying to plead to get rid of John Harbaugh for this reason and this reason exactly. And all we have done is just underperform. We get 1 ounce of pressure from the media. We get 1 ounce of, optimism that we may make it to the Super Bowl, and we just continue to disappoint the media time and time again. And unfortunately, it all falls on Lamar. And the Ravens don't give a damn because it helps them out financially. And that's just how it is. So I'm just gonna end this one, but Ravens, they right now, like today, like they still have a 5% chance of making the playoffs. So we're just gonna have to see within the next week when the Steelers play the Browns, one of the worst teams. But to be optimistic, the Browns do have the Steelers' number, weirdly enough. So we will see.
At least those fans can say that they do at least have a chance of some kind, a sliver of hope to lean on, because the Chiefs at this point, they've already been eliminated, and everything is just, because it's bad when you already have Mahomes out for the season. It's even worse when now Gardner Minshew, in this game, tore his ACL. So now he's out for the season. The second that I saw that Chris Olave was playing in this game, I knew it was over. And with that in mind, the Titans, of all teams, in other action that I did not watch, the Titans, of all teams, won against this Chiefs squad by 17 points, with Cam Ward having probably his best performance of the season, with 228 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, along with 75% completion percentage. Tony Pollard also added 102 rushing yards on the ground on 21 carries, and Tajay Spears also had 52 rushing yards on 13 carries with a rushing touchdown in this one. Man, there's just no amount of things that I can add to something like that happening. But I will say for the Titans here, not only will they get credit for this win, but with this win, after that, with Pro Bowl rosters being released, Chimere Dike, the rookie wide receiver and return specialist for the Titans, is one of the only Tennessee players to represent the squad in the Pro Bowl, and well-deserved as a return specialist. Like, he's probably been their most dynamic player on that front. And in a lot of these games, it had been their only form of scoring. It had been their only form of being able to move the ball down the field. Yet, hey, DK coming in, and he's one of the older rookies. But again, that was definitely something to be expected, given how fast he was labeled to be at the combine. And then he put that on full display. So he properly, and I know I've definitely voted for him at least one time throughout the cycle. So it's well deserved for him. But yeah, this Chiefs team is they're going through it right now, and I truly just don't know. There were other things that I had seen that I didn't look fully into about this whole Travis Kelce thing just being very up in the air right now. You have different people labeling this to be a farewell tour for him, and other people just alluding to, the next game against the Broncos. I don't even know how that's going to go for a Christmas Day game. I'm not going to lie to you. With as depleted as the Chiefs team is right now at the most valuable position, it's going to be rough for them to try to pull that off against the Broncos team that'll be looking for some revenge. But, man, all that different noise is just quite a lot to deal with. So I don't know how they'll be able to manage that. from my perspective right now. Alright. Into the Chargers and the Cowboys, and same thing. I won't spend too much time on this because this was also just a blowout. But hey, George Pickens finally started revealing who he actually can be. He himself for the Cowboys would have 7 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown to, by and large, lead everybody in that front in the game. But it came in a tough losing effort. It looks like the Chargers, even without watching this game, they had 152 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, with Amari and Hampton having 85 rushing yards and a score. So they were able to control that element of things. And I mean, Herbert was just settled in for the most part. Neither team threw or had their quarterback throw an interception. Justin Herbert had 300 passing yards on 79.3% completion and 2 touchdowns, with Quentin Johnston continuing what could be a career year for him, getting a damn one-handed Moss in the end zone to add on to a 104-yard day on 4 receptions. Trey Harris III had 4 receptions for 54 yards. Keenan Allen had 5 receptions for 44 yards, and Ladd McConkey had 4 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. Shavon Reval Jr., the rookie from East Carolina, did lead the game in tackles and also had a pass deflection. Shout out to that, but this Cowboys defense overall is about exactly what you would expect. Burnt toast, got the Chargers licking their chops the entire game. It was not even in question after a while. And then, hey, this Bucs-Panthers game, hey, listen, bro. Listen. Like I said, man, the Bucs do not want to be in this conversation. And that noise is getting louder and louder and louder as we progressively get into this. They lost this fucking game. They lost this game to this Panthers team. They allowed to, at a point, get Tay Tyrell and Macmillan out in space for a deep touchdown. As I already mentioned, they had Jatavion Sanders get a touchdown and then proceeded to get a field goal before gaming it with Lathan Ransom, the Ohio State man, making an Ohio State play, getting an interception. However, when I saw it in post, it was so far off of where Mike Evans actually was going. It's like, okay, some kind of bullshit went down. And even if that was the case or not, the fact of the matter is, the Panthers, after this game, now have the division lead in the NFC South. As terrible as it might be, they have the division lead. And to think, again, the Bucs started off so well. They started out so fucking well. And the Panthers could still find themselves in a spot where they catch them simply by staying the course. Simply by staying the course. That is insane to think about. All I know is they play each other again, so they better get ready, because this is not it. It's not even like the Panthers were able to establish the run that much. The Bucs had a slight advantage there. But, goodness gracious. Most revealing thing about this to me, though, besides all the numbers, where the hell was the Emeka Egbuka usage? What has happened? I need genuine clarity about that, because I didn't watch the game live, so I wouldn't know. But the fact that Emeka Egbuka was held to just a single catch after the start of the season that he had, breaking all those rookie receiver milestones, and with your season potentially hanging in the balance, you go to him just a single time, or convert a pass to him just a single time. That's a little interesting to me, to say the least. The Panthers win 23-20 here. Moving on to the Vikings and Giants. So yeah, this was this was something. I don't know what to say about it. This was something. Neither quarterback played particularly great. And it got to a point where J.J. McCarthy would exit the game with a hand injury and then a hairline fracture, as multiple reports have stated. So he's going to miss the next game that they have on Christmas against Detroit. But Jackson Dart may as well have been, like, he dead ass finished the game with 7 of 13 passing for 33 yards and an interception. 2.5 yards per pass attempt, bro. Like, I was looking at this for a time. It was being tracked. Okay, I'm thinking, was he hurt? Maybe another quarterback stepped in, right? No. Solely him. And he started and finished a game looking like that. Now, again, you're going to have growing pains as a rookie, but even then, it's like, damn, yo, what is this? And to think that the Giants, too, had a slight advantage in terms of efficiency on the ground. But when you are that cardiac through the air, in this league, you're going to have a rough time being able to go out and win yourself a game. Ironically enough, it would be Max Brosmer to finish the deal because he was actually able to push the ball down the field to Justin Jefferson, who would end up with one of his more prolific days in some weeks, with 85 receiving yards on 6 catches. And ultimately, you would have a J.J. McCarthy touchdown run making up part of the difference, but it would be close for most of the way, and ultimately it would be Will Reichard from 30 yards out to give them the lead. Where the Giants anticlimactically ended the game with a turnover on downs, just 6 different plays to get only 5 yards in net yardage. Like, that's fucking crazy, man. That's crazy, bro. Shout out to Aaron Jones Sr. as well, who would have 21 rushes for 85 yards. Good luck, I suppose, for the Vikings, because now you have to try to give Max Brosmer his second career start against the Lions on Christmas Day tomorrow. Yeah, so the way that some of these teams are, man, it's incredibly scary in a bad way. Incredibly scary. I mean, oh my goodness. Man. Moving on to the Saints and the Jets. Yeah, there are levels to this tanking shit. There are levels to being ass in the NFL. And the Saints would go out on display, and they'd prove that to a T. Because this man, Tyler Shuck, actually had a solid game. I question why they had him throw the ball 49 fucking times. But he did have 308 passing yards. He did have a touchdown pass. And he also got Chris Olave Jr. fit. Well, Chris Olave fit, I should say. His day was one of the most prolific that they've had in quite some time. And not to mention, I think that it was detailed that their 3-game winning streak they have had is the longest since Derek Carr was there in 2023. Do we really want to remember the Derek Carr experience? I don't know if you do, but that's the parallel. Chris Olave, though, seriously, man, 10 receptions for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns for him. The yardage is legitimately his career high, the most he's had since his rookie fucking season, and 10 receptions is also tied for a career high as well. So Shuck was kind of dealing a little bit. And Juwan Johnson also had 8 receptions for 89 yards. Taysom Hill also got himself a touchdown pass, because you damn right he did. Why not? The gadget player still doing as much as he possibly can to instill some kind of life in this Saints team, knowing that they are not going to really do much with that in mind. The game went about as you would expect for the Jets, though. It's like Brady Cook simply does not have the experience, and this team has not found their footing all season long. I can't really add on much more to that. It has been exactly as expected throughout the season. Brady Cook had 188 yards and an interception on 62.9% completion. And though they want to run the ball so much, the Saints actually stopped the run pretty well. Neither team could really run that well, but you held them to just 3.2 yards a carry. And ultimately, with you not really proving to be that much of a threat with Brady Cook under center, they just have free reign to do whatever they wanted on defense. Isaiah Davis had 4 receptions for 52 yards out of the backfield. Adonai Mitchell had 3 receptions for 43 yards. And Stone Smart had 5 receptions for 34 yards. Jamin Sherwood and Quincy Williams had 11 tackles each, along with Sherwood having 2 TFLs. But, of course, that would be far from enough. Also, Jonas Sanker, the rookie out of Virginia, would get his interception here, along with 5 tackles and 2 pass deflections on the day. I think that's his first career one. Oh, no, he has 2. I hadn't watched a lot of Saints football, but still, that's pretty damn good for Sanker in this situation. Okay. Let's see. Moving on to Bengals Dolphins. Oh. Dirty work. Bengals are really just trying to save face as best as they possibly can here, meaning that they didn't give a fuck that Quinn Ewers was starting this game. They're going to do every single thing to him imaginable to make him uncomfortable and treat him like the rookie that he is. They put up 21 points as an offense in just the third quarter alone, uncontested, to completely distance this game out, despite it being somewhat close originally, because Davon Achane is just that great of a running back. And I think Malik Washington also contributed to a rushing touchdown as well, off of a jet sweep. But after that moment, it was all Bengals. Truly. They had a great day from most standpoints, man. Joe Burrow had 4 passing touchdowns and 309 yards on 78.1% completion, while Chase Brown had just an all-around game as well. 16 total touches and 109 yards for him, along with 3 total touchdowns, 2 receiving, to get his mark on the day. You also had Jamar Chase go off for 9 receptions and 109 yards. T. Higgins had 3 receptions and 53 yards and a touchdown as well. And Mike Gesicki had 3 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown. Made this damn Bengals defense look that competitive and that good. That's how far away from it the Dolphins truly are as a front. I mean, can we really be surprised? Brantley Chubb is a tremendous pass rusher, but that is the most threatening one that you have. And they're simply going to deny him by double teaming him and putting him in spots far away from impacting any sort of play whatsoever. So now you have to rely on these other weaker defensive linemen to try to generate pressure. They can't cover for shit because they don't have the personnel to do so. And they just, like clockwork, continue to push the ball down the field. There is nothing the Dolphins could do about it at that point. Yes, it was a rough day for Quinn Ewers as well. Don't get it fucked up. 260 yards on 66.7% completion and 2 interceptions. Like, that's literally damn crazy, man. You sit down to a Tagovailoa just to have him get exposed to all of this. And that is a tough debut to deal with. But again, it's not like you can go through much worse. You've already lost most of your opportunities this season as it is. And all of this would just make Tua Tagovailoa look worse. This is literally just the first step in what could be another sequence of general just tryouts for Quinn Ewers here. This is a chance for him to prove what he's got. And it doesn't really hurt the Dolphins per se if they find that in these next couple games he doesn't show any sign of progress or potential to work with in Tom. So, I can't give him too much criticism here. That's going to be tough to step into. Jalen Waddle had 5 receptions for 72 yards. Greg Dulcich had 3 receptions for 46 yards. And Darren Waller had 3 receptions for 40 yards. Jordan Brooks also had 14 tackles and a pass deflection. If only that kind of effort was evident elsewhere. Moving on to the Jags and the Broncos. And with this win, both of these teams still have a chance to go for the 1 seed in the AFC. Only the Jags would come out on top in this one. To my fucking surprise. I'm shocked about it. I did not see that coming at all. But here we are, down the stretch of the year, and the Jags have an advantage in the AFC South. They have a track for the 1 seed. This is actually crazy stuff. They went to work on this Broncos defense. The recently extended Jacoby Myers would have a solid outing himself, but it was actually Parker Washington out in the receiving game for this Jags team to get the job done. Going for 6 receptions and what I believe is a career high 145 yards, along with a touchdown on the day. Trevor Lawrence, overall, pretty damn good game for him. 279 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks on 63.9% completion, along with a rushing touchdown. And, hey, the rushing game could have been better, but that's the Broncos' nature of their defense. They are just stingy when it comes to allowing running backs to have potential career games. They don't allow it. They just don't. So that was to be expected to an extent. But with the strength of that Broncos defense, I don't think that anybody could have seen this coming, truly. And in that situation, you'd want your offense as a collective to step up and make something happen. You probably don't want to see Bo Nix throwing the ball 47 times. Despite that, he had 352 passing yards and a touchdown, but also had 59.6% completion and an interception that was thrown to Jerry Jones. Tough, brother. Tough. I got a point in this game. They were down 34-17. And to think that in the fourth quarter, there was legitimately no avenue for the Broncos to find a way to come back from this. Even with what we've seen from them, to go back to the damn Giants game, to make those fans salty again. We've seen them heat up in weird moments of the game, and they were not able to pull that off against the Jaguars defense that is equally as stingy of a unit as they are. Probably worse in some metrics compared to the Broncos, but people don't understand how great of a defensive roster they have as well. Goodness. As a whole, their rushers ran for 101 yards and a touchdown on 5.9 yards per carry, but to only run the ball 17 times is pretty uncharacteristic for this Broncos unit as well. And that's also a testament to the Jaguars' defense. Just trying to, at pivotal moments, make the impact plays on the ground. Not to mention that R.J. Harvey's 38-yard touchdown run would by far be the longest play for him. I will say that overall, distribution was alright. Cortland Sutton had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. R.J. Harvey had 4 receptions for 71 yards. Troy Franklin had 4 receptions for 66 yards. And Evan Ingram had 2 receptions for 36 yards. It was shown in post somewhat, although I didn't want to look at it fully. Pat Bryant II, the rookie out of Illinois for them, suffered a lower leg injury, I believe, and was carted off later in the game. So I would hope that he recovers from that. It looked rough, though. Truly. Alex Singleton for the Broncos had 13 tackles, including 4 solo as well. The Falcons and the Cardinals. Oh, man. Watching it in post, we know Chad Rollins sucks. We know he sucks. Dude, like, did you really expect anything different? This man literally missed multiple field goals that could have made a potential final drive from the Cardinals far easier than it actually ended up being. I had to drive all the way down the field and put it into the hands of Jacoby Brissett to go and win them the game. That's not what he does as a bridge quarterback. That's not what he does as a backup quarterback, as a game manager. And he was promptly intercepted by the damn Jaguars, Panthers, Jags, Panthers, Texans reject CJ Henderson to ultimately game it there in what was just chaos for both of these teams. At the very least, Michael Wilson Jr. continues his high of the last few weeks, getting a pretty crazy fucking catch in for a touchdown on a day where he also had 2 receptions for 52 yards. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I guess, in limited reps was still back, but was held to a catch on 14 yards. This shit is crazy. Anytime Elijah Higgins is your leading receiver, you have an issue. You have a fucking issue. And I guess that was the Falcons' plan. You know, they don't want Trey McBride to get going. They don't want Marvin Harrison Jr. to get going. Even if Michael Wilson has put in a little more work over the last few weeks with him being out, it is Marvin Harrison Jr. that possesses some more talent here. So they got to zone in on that. Fair enough. The Cardinals actually ran the ball okay in this one. Combined for 132 yards on 5.7 yards per carry. So a lot better than they've been doing for most of the year. But it still would not help them clutch up timely drives. They kept on getting themselves in situations where they were driving down the field and just had missed opportunities. Red zone opportunities, not to mention the 2 missed field goals. It just all became a little too much for them to bear. And again, when you're putting the hands, you're putting your faith in Jacoby Brissett to do those things. That's outside of his body. He ain't going to get that done. You already know what time it is. As for the Falcons and Bijan Robinson, they still trust. He had a combined 23 touches for 168 yards and a receiving touchdown out of the backfield. Kirk Cousins also added 3 total touchdowns, including a QB sneak, probably, touchdown run, and 197 passing yards on 60% completion and an interception in this game. Kyle Pitts Sr. had 7 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown. Interesting thing pointed out to me, Kyle Pitts Sr., despite not getting the ball all the time, has legitimately increased his output in touchdown catches in each and every single one of his seasons. In perfect numerical order. A single touchdown catch in his rookie season, 2 in year 2, 3 in year 3, 4 last year, and now 5 this season. Do with that what you will. Nevertheless, no matter how it is coming, the man is getting fed. You have to respect that. He's getting his. This is what people have been waiting for so long. Oh my goodness. Okay. Moving on to the Texans and the Raiders. If not for Ashton Jeanty finally breaking through and away from this trash-ass offensive line, this game would have been a much bigger blowout than it probably should have been. Instead, this game was kept close. Simply because of Ashton Jeanty accounting for 25 touches and 188 yards, including 128 on the ground, and 2 touchdowns. Both of them over 50 plus yards down the field. Both of them. That shit is crazy. Because if you look elsewhere, they didn't find much outside of Brock Bowers getting himself an early touchdown on a day where Geno Smith would have 201 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception on 69.6% completion. But the Texans were able to hold on eventually for just long enough despite not having that same impact in the ground game that they had last week from Jordan. He was held to 53 yards on 15 carries. CJ Stroud could have probably put together a more prolific day, but again, you just handle business. Poor Raiders, right? We can show mercy to them sometimes. He had 187 passing yards on 65.7% completion and a touchdown. Nico Collins had 4 receptions for 59 yards. Christian Kirk had 3 receptions for 37 yards, and Dalton Schultz had 5 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown catch. And finally, for the 49ers and the Colts on Monday, rather. It started out pretty back and forth. Honestly. Phillip Rivers, although neither quarterback was really stretching the ball all the way down the field, both quarterbacks were dealing. Brock Purdy would get a career high in touchdown passes in a single game in this game, but the Colts were not too far out of it. Like, this is a one-possession ball game at halftime, and that's despite a fumble deterring one of their earliest drives, which would in totality affect them mightily. That's just a non-possession, an extra one for the 49ers that instantly led to a touchdown to Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, who they couldn't guard all night long because who can? And it just continued to pile on. But I guess they were given some retribution with me watching him post Eddie Pinheiro nearly bank a fucking 64-yard field goal in off the front crossbar. And it just barely got the lift that it needed. It had a chance, but it fell forward, and ultimately it was kept just short. Aside from that, man, the 49ers just continued to take it to this damn defense. One that had already been depleted as it was, and they just did not stop. It'd be Jawan Jennings to account for a receiving touchdown here, and ultimately a field goal in before getting a damn massive surge late. As at that point, Jonathan Taylor had gotten it to a one-score game, but with the help of Christian McCaffrey getting this receiving touchdown and D. Winters also picking off Phillip Rivers for a score, despite them forcing an interception on Brock Purdy themselves just the drive before. Man. That would essentially game it right then and right there. It was definitely a valiant effort by Phillip Rivers. By no means did he play bad. But oh man, with them being unable to get anything else really going, it would be the 49ers to take the game here. Brock Purdy had 5 touchdown passes and an interception on 295 passing yards and 73.5% completion. Christian McCaffrey had a combined 27 touches for 146 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. George Kittle had 7 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown, and that was when he was healthy. He, per multiple reports and per Adam Schefter as well, would be diagnosed with a low to mid-grade ankle sprain and is probably set to miss at least just a little bit of time in a season where he's already been behind the 8 ball in terms of availability on the field. So that's definitely tough for him. Jawan Jennings had 5 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown as well. As for the Colts, Phillip Rivers, again, 277 passing yards on 65.7% completion, along with 2 touchdowns and an interception, is by no means bad to say the least. But with him, with his immobility, and with the lack of arm strength that he possesses, you have to, if you are the Colts, get into a situation where the defense can respect the run game enough to start to open up these passing lanes far more. And the Colts failed to do that because they could not get Jonathan Taylor going. 16 rushes for 46 yards and a touchdown for a man that had been running all over the league at multiple points in the season. That is definitely tough And again, with him being the best remaining skill position player in their team, they're going to want to account for him in the best way that they see fit. I don't know if something like this would have been helped with more touches. But you still, even in that situation, even if that's the case, are you going to make the most of those touches, or are you going to continuously be held to just under 3 yards of carry? Because that would not strike fear in my heart if I was a defensive coordinator. So it just puts the Colts in an even rougher spot, as they, with this loss to the 49ers, would allow the Jaguars, the Colts, and also with this loss, the Colts would allow the Jags, the Chargers, and the Bills, I should say, to clinch playoff spots in the AFC, making it so damn tight for the battle for the final 2 spots. AFC North still has to get themselves in. Somebody's got to win that division somehow, some way, and then not to mention the chaos for a final wild card spot. It's crazy, man. Alec Pierce would have himself a prolific day, though. He had 4 receptions for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns, both of them on back-to-back possessions, I believe. Josh Downs had 5 receptions for 65 yards, and Michael Pittman Jr. had 4 receptions for 32 yards. Jonathan Taylor had 3 receptions for 33 yards out of the backfield, and Tyler Warren accounted for 3 receptions and 30 yards on the day as well. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.